Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, please have a seat. I call to order the informal meeting to conduct an interactive dialogue with Mr. Rafael Mariano Grossi, a candidate for the position of the United Nations Secretary General. The interactive dialogues mark a critical step in the selection and appointment process for the next Secretary General, while also coming at a pivotal moment for the United Nations. The person we select will be more than the face of this institution. Our choice will send a powerful message about who we are and whether we truly serve all 8 billion people of the world in all their diversity. The multilateral system with the United Nations as its center is under unprecedented political and financial pressure. From a deepening liquidity crisis to fundamental principles of the UN Charter being put into question. The next Secretary General will be entrusted not only by navigating these challenges, but also with advancing essential reforms to ensure the United Nations is fit for the future. At the same time, the world needs the United Nations more than ever, and it needs a Secretary General who can provide strong, principled and effective leadership across all three pillars: peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. These interactive dialogues, which I convene in line with General Assembly Resolution 79/327, offer a unique opportunity for candidates to present their vision for the future of this organization and for member states and civil society to ask questions and interact directly with candidates. The interactive dialogues are essential to ensuring a transparent and inclusive selection and appointment process while underlining the important role of the General Assembly. I encourage each of you to make full use of this opportunity, and I thank all candidates for their active participation, member states and civil society for their questions and engagement. But these dialogues do not end in this chamber. They are also an opportunity for people around the world, the very people the United Nations serves, to listen, to engage, and to hold this process to the highest standards. For this decision does not only concern a few, but all of us in and outside the United Nations who look to this institution to reflect the principles and values it champions. While we hear the candidates individually, as I said this morning, a town hall format will follow later in the process. As reflected in my letters dated March 4th and April 15th, 2026, the dialogue will begin with an introduction by the candidate of their vision and priorities for up to 10 minutes, followed by an interactive exchange. Each interactive dialogue will last up to 3 hours. The interactive exchange will take place in 2 segments. We will begin with a 1.5-hour discussion focused on leadership abilities, experience, and skills needed to lead a strong organization that is fit for the future. Following this, we will move into the second segment, which will focus on the 3 pillars of the United Nations: peace and security, development, and human rights. In line with revitalization resolutions, civil society representatives will be invited to pose questions in each of the 2 thematic segments. Before proceeding to hear the presentation of the vision of the candidate, I would like to inform members on how to inscribe to speak in the 2 thematic segments, just in case you didn't listen this morning. Delegations wishing to speak can register their wish to speak by pressing the microphone button later. Delegations are asked to do so at the beginning of each of the 2 segments, as announced in my letter. Please do not press the microphone button yet. I will announce when delegation will be asked to press the microphone button at the beginning of each segment, and when your microphone is green, you press the button already, so don't press it again. Member states speaking on behalf of groups are invited to approach the list of speakers table and will be given priority. After the conclusion of the first segment, delegations will be again invited, if you haven't done so before, if you desire to speak in the second segment. Delegations can speak only once in each segment, whether on behalf of a group or in national capacity. In the second segment, priority will be given to delegations that did not have an opportunity to speak before. By this, I now invite Mr. Grossi to present his vision. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends, Madam President, dear Annalena. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you directly in this format, so eloquently described by Madam President just now. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I like to think that this is a conversation amongst colleagues who care for the UN, so that you can get a few ideas from me, and perhaps also I can listen to some of your particular concerns, which are so important for anybody who would aspire to occupy this, the highest, perhaps, position, diplomatically speaking, in the world. Dear friends, although history is never linear or subject to one interpretation, but in mine, this particular selection process, election, however you want to call it, of a new Secretary General for the United Nations 80 years after its creation is perhaps one, if not the most, but one of the most consequential ones that we will have. The reason I believe it is so, in fact, there are two reasons I believe this is the case. The first one, I think we hear every day. We see it every day, and I think it is reflected constantly in your own statements under these roofs, or in the press, or whenever the words United Nations and the world are pronounced. It's a world of fragmentation, it's a world of tension, it's a world of polarization, and so on and so on. And I don't want to tax your patience with that because you know it. And I think on this, we all agree that we are seeing this unique moment, which we all as a human community have to deal with. But the second factor brings more home this idea that I have that this election or selection process is so consequential. And this is because we are at a time where there are enormous, huge doubts about our institution. There are huge doubts about, first, the added value of the United Nations in solving some of these problems, the efficiency in doing that, the capacity to do that. Cynicism, frustration, sadness. And we, I think, as people who work for peace and who believe in multilateral organizations, otherwise we would not be here today, have to recognize that this is the case, that the trend is not a good one, that the direction in which the United Nations is moving is not the one we would all like to see. This is why, in choosing the person who is going to be working with you, working with the 193 member states of this organization, is at this point so important. We know, and it is in everybody's mouth, and I believe we are going to have plenty of opportunity as we have this discussion today, that there is this idea of reform, and everybody is trying to look more reformist than the other. Good, that's good. Only that 2 years ago, that discussion was not taking place, and I think you will remember. When I read the Pact of the Future, I find the word reform only 3 times, and it's never applied to the UN. Or yes, well, to the Security Council or the international financial architecture, if I remember correctly. but not in the way we are seeing it now. And I think this is good. I think this is good because we have to recognize that this was long overdue. I think, and I praise Secretary General for having taken the courageous decision to launch UN80. And you are all busy with this process. We are trying, me as head of an important international organization, not part of the UN system properly, but related, closely related to the UN. We are trying to help in that process. And of course, personally, individually, as a candidate, I have been following in great detail what is being discussed, what has been achieved so far. And we are all waiting for the proposals that the Secretary General is going to be putting in front of the General Assembly next fall. So this is good that we have started, but we all know that UN80 as is more a snapshot than a plan for the future. There are ideas there, but we know that it will be upon the next Secretary General and the team who is going to be working with you to implement whatever is agreed and also to move with other things that are going to be left pending. Because I'm sure, and we all know at this stage, that many of the things that we would like to see are still debated. We are not on a same place on a number of things as derived from the different work streams on which you have been working so far. So that is correct and good, but still it's just a first step of a long road ahead of us. When it comes to what needs to be done in a wider sense, we all have a feeling that in a world where war is prevailing and has returned furiously to Europe and to other places, and in Africa, even in South America, in a certain sense, in the Caribbean, in Asia, there is no continent which has not known the return of war. And this explains why many, and I agree with that, say, where is the UN when it comes to peace and security? After all, 80 years ago, this house was created after the cataclysmic effect of the Second World War, which began in Europe but extended all over the world. So that was the idea. And this is why I think it's important that we think about that. What are the tools? What are the ways and means that we have to make the United Nations count on all of these processes? Because, dear friends, it is not as a result of us saying we need a place at the table that we are going to have it. No. No. It's not happening now. So unless there is leadership able to do that and there is support from the House, this is not going to happen. So we have to concentrate on that. We really do. Does that mean that we are going to neglect, that we are going to set aside the needs and the requirements and the urgent appeals that come together with our necessities in terms of development? Or, by the same token, on human rights? No, not at all. But where can be development where there is war? When there is war, there is death, there is destruction, and there is, talking about development, there is huge deviation from resources badly needed to lift billions out of poverty to the war machine. So this idea that looking for peace and security means disregarding development is not correct. We have to be present at all these fronts. And of course, human rights. Because the first thing that is affected in war is the individual. is the innocent people who die. Modern war does not respect the difference between civilians, minors, women, or whatever category in our human nature that can be. So we need to be looking at these things. We need to be present at all of these trenches with the same determination that we must have, for sure. And I'm going to be wrapping up my introduction. This has to be done with enlightened pragmatism. Sometimes people ask me, why do you talk so much about pragmatism? Where are the principles? Yes, the principles are there, and they must be there as our compass. But this house was not created to be an institution propelling messages from an ivory tower. This institution was created, and it is supposed to be solving problems on the ground. And this means adapting to situations. This means talking when we need to talk. This means engaging with all, especially those who are at war with each other. So this is my view. My view is of an institution that will be out there, that will be acting with equal determination on all these fronts. And this, and I hope I will have a chance to exemplify that, does not come from well-written few pages. This comes from my own experience as Director General of an organization that is at the heart of current efforts to ensure peace and security in many places. So I look forward to having this opportunity to get into more detail with you in this conversation. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank Mr. Grossi. We now proceed to the first segment. Delegations wishing to speak in the first segment are invited to press the microphone button now. Members are reminded that they are encouraged to ask short and focused questions. As said before, then we have more chances for member states later in their national capacity. Interventions should be not more than 2 minutes for delegations speaking in national capacity and not more than 3 minutes for delegations speaking on behalf of a group of member states. Time limits will be strictly enforced by automatic microphone cutoff. A timer will be projected on screen to assist speakers to observe the time limit. The microphone will start blinking 30 seconds before the time limit elapses. As indicated in my letter, after each intervention, the candidate will be given the floor to respond. The response should not be more than 2 minutes for question from delegations speaking in national capacity and not more than 3 minutes from delegations speaking on behalf of a group of member states. I will remind candidates of their time limits with my little cards. Civil society questions will be interspersed with questions from member states. As mentioned before, we will now focus on leadership abilities, experience, and skills needed to lead a strong organization that is fit for the future. By this, I will give the floor to the first speaker. First on the list will be the distinguished representative of Uruguay on behalf of the group of 77 and China, followed by Jordan and the European Union.
Gracias, señor Rafael Mariano Grossi. The group of 77 and China attaches great importance to the selection and appointment of the Secretary General and reaffirms the need to ensure that this process remains open, transparent, and inclusive in accordance with the relevant General Assembly resolutions. First, with reference to the UN80 initiative introduced by Secretary General Antonio Guterres, what is your assessment of the proposal and how do you believe it could advance a United Nations that is more effective, efficient, and delivers greater impact on the ground? How would you ensure that any related reforms fully respect the intergovernmental nature of the United Nations, preserve the balance among its 3 pillars, and do not come at the expense of development mandates or other priorities of developing countries? Second, With the 2030 deadline fast approaching, how would you ensure the full and timely implementation of the Agenda for Sustainable Development, bearing in mind the universality and divisibility of the goals and targets, the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, and the commitment to leave no one behind? Specifically, how do you envisage the role of the Secretary General and the UN Secretariat in advancing this objective? Third, if you were appointed as Secretary General, how would you ensure equal and fair distribution based on gender and geographical balance as prescribed by Article 101 of the Charter and the relevant General Assembly resolutions, particularly in terms of the overall increase in the representation of unrepresented and underrepresented countries, especially from developing countries, at the senior level appointments within the UN Secretariat and the broader UN system? 4. At a time of shrinking fiscal space, declining ODA, rising debt burdens, and widening development gaps, how would you, as Secretary General, mobilize the United Nations system to defend and advance the development pillar, accelerate implementation of the 2030 Agenda, and support financing for development in a manner fully responsive to the priorities of developing countries? Fifth, in light of the organization's persistent liquidity crisis, including warnings of a potential race to bankruptcy, what concrete measures would you, as Secretary General, undertake to promote compliance with Member States' financial obligations, ensuring that assessed contributions are paid in full, on time, and without conditions? Finally, the Group of 77 and China underscores the importance of safeguarding the full independence, impartiality, and institutional integrity of the Secretariat, while ensuring that it provides equitable and effective support to all Member State representations in the discharge of their responsibilities. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Uruguay on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. Please, Mr. Grossi, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias a la distinguida representante de Uruguay por las preguntas. With reference to UN80, I referred to it in passing in my introductory remarks. I think what is being discussed at the moment goes in the right direction. We have had important achievements, in particular in the evaluation of the second work stream with mandates and the approval recently of a resolution that, while not going to the solution of the whole problem, at least provides a way forward into making or having a leaner process and some order in this rather disorganized number of mandates which we used to have in an incessant accumulation. So that was good. The first work stream, of course, that one can say it is more abordable because, of course, it has to do with is related to administrative processes, streamlining these procurement services and other things which I think are easier to tackle. Of course, the third, and this is perhaps when we start getting into a territory which is not so simple, has to do with more structural reforms, including possible mergers, where we see inevitably emerging different views on what needs to be done. I believe that the process, as I was saying, needs to be taken as a continuity, as a continuum. So I hope that if elected from 1st of January, I'll pick up where the thing was left, hoping that what will be approved in the fall will be as ambitious as possible. The second question, of course, related to this Agenda 2030 and how to come to the implementation of the SDGs. When we look at the percentage, of course, there are different ways to put this, but it's quite dismal. When we look at the rate of achievement of the SDGs, 80%, 20%, some others look at it with a more benevolent prism, and they say around 30%. I don't know. In any case, we see, and especially in developing countries, we see that there is a long way to go before we can say that we are in a relatively satisfactory territory. Quite clearly, the common but differentiated responsibilities principle and leaving no one behind must be there. In terms of universality, yes, of course, but universality doesn't mean unanimity. It doesn't mean that we have to do the same thing for every country. One size fits all does not work. So it might be the moment to start being more focused, more sectoral. I have some words on that in my vision for those who may care to read. I think, and I will be returning to this when we tackle other issues. On gender and geographical balance, very important. You know, I took over an organization in 2019 with 28% of women, Madam President, 28%, 72% were men. Today is 53% women. And I'm talking about the IAEA in what is, I was told, when I came to the head of that organization, of a male-dominated profession. That does not exist, it's a fiction. And now we have, including in the higher senior levels, we have parity, if not a slight majority of women. And the same applies to representation, because, of course, geographical, this is what it is in the Charter, actually, geographical representation is what we need, and we've seen an increase of 10% over the past 5 years, which means 2% per year. And for anybody who knows something about human resources and recruitment processes, this is not an easy feat. The development pillar, finance for development, of course, we may be able to extend a little bit in the next questions. The Sevilla Compromise commitment is very important, but we still see more enunciation than practical results there. And one word on the liquidity crisis. I think this is, of course, what has been behind much of what has been done in terms of reform. I am confident that as of the next year, knowing and having a clear sense of direction, the payment situation will improve dramatically. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the next speaker, the distinguished representative of Jordan on behalf of the Accountability, Coherence and Transparency Group, ACT, followed by the European Union and Papua New Guinea.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank Mr. Grossi and ask 2 questions on behalf of the Accountability, Coherence and Transparency Group, or in short, ACT, a cross-regional group comprised of 20 small and mid-sized countries committed to a transparent and accountable UN and seeking to improve the working methods of the Security Council. The first question. ACT believes that the Secretary General should be proactive in reaching out to the Security Council when crises are imminent. In your opinion, what are the principles that would guide you to bring matters threatening the maintenance of international peace and security to the attention of the Security Council pursuant to Article 99 of the Charter? What specific steps would you take prior to invoking Article 99? And what course of action would you pursue following its invocation if the Security Council remains deadlocked and violations continue? Second and last question, in line with the Charter provisions and the oath taken by the Secretary General, the ACT Group believes that the SG should exercise independence in the selection of senior officials. If elected, how would you build up your team? What will you do to safeguard your independence? How would you take into account factors such as geographic and gender balance alongside merit in those appointments and avoid the continuation of monopolies on senior posts for certain nationalities? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Jordan on behalf of the ACT Group, please.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador and the ACT Group, for those very pertinent questions. On the first, I believe in a constant dialogue between the Secretary General and the Security Council. Of course, Article 99 is there, and it indicates a sense of urgency when something really bad is happening and the Secretary General says, hey, we have to look at this. I tend to believe, and I, if elected, will have a permanent dialogue with the Security Council. This is indispensable, and in particular with you, with the ambassadors, the PRs of the P5 and the E10 and all the rest. This is essential. The Secretary General, the first port of call for the Secretary General is you, and is the ambassadors here who can provide with an immediate reaction to what is happening. So for me, it is not an issue that it has some extraordinary nature about it. I would see it as a permanent thing. On the second question, Ambassador, on the independence, I would say you have in me the advantage of knowing what I'm doing in Vienna. And the group as well. So I don't have a problem there. I think that having the best people, the best women and men is never difficult to balance against geographical realities. And the geographical element is important because we are the global house, and we need to be reflective of different perceptions. Thank you very much.
I thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union on behalf of the EU and its member states, followed by Papua New Guinea and the first civil society organization.
Thank you, Madam President, and a warm welcome, Mr. Grossi. As leading political, financial, and operational supporters of the United Nations and multilateralism, the European Union and its member states are deeply invested in the UN Charter, international law, and the UN's success on the ground. We therefore fully expect to be working closely with the Secretary General, who clearly shares these principles and values, can match principles to action, and has a clear appreciation of the European Union's role in the UN system. At this critical juncture, the United Nations needs a Secretary General who can build trust, accelerate UN reforms, and deliver solutions that make a real difference in people's lives on the ground. It needs a Secretary General that is fully prepared to defend and promote with equal vigor all three UN pillars and full respect for the UN Charter and international law. The EU and its member states support all strands of the UN's work equally. On peace security, we actively advance the implementation of key UN mandates through our security and defense missions. On human rights, we remain firmly committed to their universality and indivisibility, while noting with concern that only 1% of the UN system spending is dedicated to human rights mandates at a time that human rights are increasingly attacked. And on sustainable development, we provide close to 50% of all official development assistance and over 1/3 of all voluntary contributions to the UN system to make sustainable development a reality. And yet, as noted, with 4 years to go until 2030, progress in achieving the SDGs is still lagging. Mr. Grossi, you mentioned before very eloquently the devastating effects of war on both sustainable development and human rights. If you set aside war and the financial issues for a second, what major challenges do you see to the actual implementation of sustainable development on the ground that you would be willing to attack immediately upon assumption of your duties? And when it comes to financing itself, how would you plan concretely to promote the mobilization of all sources of financing in line with the Sevilla commitment to close the SDG gap by 2030? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the European Union on behalf of the EU and its member states. Please, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup l'Union européenne pour ces questions. D'abord, pour ce qui est du budget. C'est clair, l'Union européenne soutient les Nations unies d'une manière éloquente, et c'est plus d'un tiers des ressources de l'organisation qui viennent de l'Union européenne. C'est aussi le cas à l'agence où je travaille. Donc je suis pleinement conscient de ce que vous faites pour nous. Je note aussi donc le fait que vous signalez une certaine manque d'équilibre pour ce qui est de la répartition des ressources, par exemple dans les cas de droits de l'homme, un espace thématique qui est très cher à l'Union européenne, où l'Union européenne a marqué des points pionniers, moi je dirais. Je pense que dans ces contextes-là, les droits de l'homme, c'est un des espaces où la communauté internationale a marqué, malgré peut-être le relativement maigre pourcentage des ressources, a marqué vraiment des progrès impressionnants. Je crois, malgré les problèmes que nous avons, on a développé ensemble les conseils des droits de l'homme, on a des procédures spéciaux, on a une quantité d'outils diplomatiques et politiques pour adresser les problèmes que nous avons. Donc je crois et je suis confiant dans notre capacité de, malgré, je dis, ces apparents manques d'équilibre, de bien travailler dans ces domaines-là. Vous dites aussi, et vous vous référez à la question de financement pour le développement et ce qui a été accompli à Séville. Moi, je crois, et je le signale dans mon document des visions, qu'il faut et il faudra, je crois, un rapport constructif et complémentaire avec les institutions financières internationales. Je pense que pour l'instant, il existe une certaine confrontation où l'on voit une narrative différente et on l'a vu la semaine dernière, je crois, vous avez sûrement suivi les réunions du printemps de la Banque mondiale, du groupe de la Banque mondiale et du Fonds monétaire international, où parfois les mêmes problèmes sont adressés d'une manière radicalement différente si on est à New York ou si on est à Washington. Et je pense qu'on doit avoir la possibilité de converger. Parce que c'est clair, Madame, Messieurs, c'est clair que sans cette vision plus unifiée, il sera très très difficile de faire avancer les objectifs du développement durable. Merci.
Merci. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea on behalf of the Pacific Islands Forum, followed by the Civil Society Organization Center for Development of International Law and South Africa.
Madam President, I have the honor to, on behalf of the chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, the Solomon Islands, address you today on behalf of the 14 members of the Pacific Islands Forum, represented with presence in New York. We thank the President of the General Assembly for this valuable opportunity to engage directly with the candidates for Secretary General. The Pacific region faces many challenges, some shared by members across this Assembly, others unique to our region. In confronting these challenges, we draw on our strengths, including a commitment to working together through the Pacific Islands Forum to deliver for our people. But no challenge is more pressing than climate change, which will disproportionately imperil the lives, the livelihoods, security, and well-being of the Pacific peoples. Secretary General Guterres visited our region and helped him to appreciate the gravity of this threat and to mobilize the international attention needed. It also allowed him to appreciate the region's leadership and to hear firsthand from our communities on the work they are doing to bolster resilience. During his 2024 visit to Tonga for the Pacific Islands Forum, the Secretary General described Pacific Islands region, and I quote, a beacon of solidarity and strength, environmental stewardship, and peace, unquote. The Pacific and the UN have a long history of collaboration, and we want to ensure that this partnership continues and prioritized under the UN's new leadership. We have two questions for all candidates. First, how would you, as the Office of Secretary General, how would you use the Office of the Secretary General to draw attention and mobilize action to address the unique vulnerabilities of all small island developing states, including Pacific Seas, in particular the impacts of climate change? Second, the UN is often pulled towards crises that dominate headlines, as realities unfold more slowly with irreversible consequences. How will you balance urgent conflicts with existential threats such as impacts of climate change? What criteria will you guide in your decision where attention and political capital will be directed to? I thank you indeed.
I thank the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea on behalf of the Pacific Island Forum. Mr. Grossi, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. I've had the unique opportunity of visiting several times your region. I've been to Solomon Islands, I've been to Fiji. As you know, it's a region that has a complex past when it comes to nuclear tests and other activities that were taking place in that part of the world. And that allowed me to be closer and to have a first-hand look at some of the issues that you are describing in your question. Being the IEA, one of the only unique organizations in the UN system dealing with energy, we are part of the energy debates, and of course, what is being done to try to mitigate the effects of human activities on the climate and the effects that those are having. So please be reassured that I have a first-hand knowledge of what is happening there and the need to mitigate the effects of human activity on the climate to make sure that what is happening there can be mitigated and efficient solutions are found. I think for that, it will be very important to engage by and large internationally with everybody. You know, I believe in talking to everybody, including those who may be at the source of the problems that you are having. And I think it is very important to engage with industry, with all the sectors, with all the energy producers in the world to make sure that we address this without, of course, undue delays. You say it rightly, the unique vulnerabilities of small island development states in the Pacific and elsewhere in the Caribbean and in other parts of the world are unique, and we have to recognize them because that is beyond your capacity. It's not a question that depends on a government of one tendency or the other. It's a vulnerability factor that is there, and we have to make sure that this is not collateral to the decrease in international assistance that we are seeing. You refer to what criteria one would use to attach priority to one or the other, where simply there is no way to say whether one thing is more important than the other. And the big demand on the Secretary General and on the UN is to be there for everybody, be it a war, be it a climate situation, be it a humanitarian problem. This is why this House is so indispensable.
I thank you. I now give the floor to the first civil society organization speaker in this interactive dialogue, the Center for Development of International Law. Please, distinguished representative, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I am Adam Lupel, speaking on behalf of CDIL and the Coalition for the UN We Need, C4UN, a global civil society platform working on UN reform. The SG selection process provides a once-in-a-decade opportunity to have a global debate about leadership. Young people have even circulated a job description for what they call the toughest job in the world. We, the peoples, are watching. But effective leadership is not exclusively about the top executive. It is also about how supervisors inspire others to be leaders in their own right. How will you inspire staff from undersecretaries general on down to be leaders? How will you encourage a dynamic, mission-driven ecosystem of innovation, integrity, accountability, inclusivity, courage, and effectiveness? Please provide examples from your past managerial experience. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Center for Development of International Law. Please, Mr. Grossi, the floor.
Thank you for the question. I really like it because the organization I lead is one that, because of what has been happening in the world, has become a field operation. It was never meant to be that, but we are there, you know, in the front lines of war. We are in places that we were not imagining that we would be there. And I hope, I don't know if I succeed, but I hope I inspire my staff by going me first to places that I expect them to go. and I mean battlefields. So I hope that this is a way, crossing landmines and under fire more than once, together with them, to show that they have a head that is there with them. You know, nice words won't do. Thank you very much.
I thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of South Africa on behalf of the Southern African Development Community, followed by Austria and Egypt.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for this opportunity to engage with the candidates in this fashion. And Mr. Grossi, welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to engage you in these interactive dialogues. I'll get right to the questions to save time. So on behalf of the Southern African Development Community, the 16 member states, there are multiple General Assembly resolutions on Africa, including on NEPAD and Agenda 2063. As well as the root causes of conflict and sustainable development in Africa, which require follow-up and implementation. How would you ensure, as Secretary General, that these are effectively operationalized? Another question from the group is, which Africa-related commitments from the current Secretary General's tenure would you retain and build on? Then, in light of the organization's liquidity constraints, how would you safeguard development mandates and ensure sufficient funding for Africa-focused programs? Another question the group had was, how would you safeguard the independence of the Office of the Secretary General when major contributors place conditions and make demands under threat of withholding assessed contributions or delaying these contributions? And then lastly from the group, the world is facing a major environmental crisis that requires urgent action. How would you seek to defend environmental rights and implement climate justice? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of South Africa on behalf of the Southern African Development Community.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Of course, Agenda 2063, NEPAD, and the host of issues having to do specifically with the African agendas have to be well harmonized with whatever we do here. I think that when it comes to the development pillar, it is clear that much of what is done and much what is being discussed in terms of the ability of the UN system to deliver have to do with what is done in Africa. Of course, also in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and in some parts of Asia. But it has to do with that. The Secretary General has been especially committed to Africa, and I think we all admire that. I don't see any reason for that to change, albeit that we will need to adapt to the circumstances that we are having. The development mandates for Africa are there. We don't need to reinvent them. We don't need to rewrite them. If there is something the UN doesn't need is more conferences, and I think we have enough in that sense. This is a time for implementation, perhaps more modest, perhaps less vocal, but more practical. What you say about, of course, the independence and the pressure that comes to the Office of the Secretary General in delivering its mission, believe you me, that being the head of the IEA, I am quite used to that. When it comes to pressures on nuclear matters and what is happening in the Middle East or what is happening in other parts of the world. So I think it is there that I will need the advice of my African colleagues in order to work efficiently in this regard. We have been following, and we follow everything that is done with the different mandates, and we will simply try to implement them in the best possible way. Environmentally speaking, I think I addressed partially these issues in previous answers. I think there are other aspects which are typical or more prominent for Africa, like desertification, that which we did not engage on, or water management, etc. From the IEA, as you know, with Atoms for Food, with Rays of Hope, and the programs that I have introduced there. We have been working with the colleagues of the African Union and the different sub-regional organizations to try to make a contribution, and it will continue like that.
I thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Austria on behalf of the Group of Friends on the Rule of Law, followed by Egypt and the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, dear Director General Rafael Grossi. I have the honor to speak on behalf of over 50 cross-regional members of the Group of Friends of the Rule of Law. In recent years, we have witnessed breaches of even the most fundamental provisions of the UN Charter, including the obligation of all member states to refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force. This paired with the failure of the Security Council to take appropriate action in response. Two questions of the Group of Friends. First, what concrete, proactive and preventive measures would you personally pursue if elected as Secretary General to strengthen the rule of law and prevent breaches by member states of the Charter's principles? And second, what specific preventive diplomacy initiatives have you launched or would you launch or strengthen? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Austria on behalf of the Group of Friends on the Rule of Law. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much, and thank you, dear Ambassador, for the question. I think this comes hand in hand with the way in which I, if elected as your Secretary General, would be dealing with breaches to international peace and security. It has to do with that. It has to do with a Secretary General that would be, I don't know if preventing it, but acting on them. Sometimes preventive diplomacy, we haven't had a chance yet, but I'm sure something will come from you on that. Preventive diplomacy is essential, and it's part of the diplomatic trade that we have to try to prevent conflict. But when use of force happens, and it does happen in international relations, the involvement of the Secretary General, the immediate attention, visible immediate attention to the problem is there. And therefore, in doing that, hopefully with some success in addressing this issue that the group is addressing in terms of the concerns about the breaches to international law and the principles enshrined in the Charter not being fully respected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Egypt on behalf of the Arab Group, followed by the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the next civil society organization.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. أتشرف بأن ألقي هذه المداخلة باسم المجموعة العربية ونرحب بالسيد رافائيل جروسي لمشاركته في هذا الحوار التفاعلي. السيد الرئيس، تؤكد المجموعة العربية استعدادها للتعاون البناء مع مختلف المرشحين لمنصب السكرتير العام، بما يسهم في دعم دور الأمم المتحدة وتعزيز قدرتها على مواجهة التحديات الدولية الراهنة. وتود المجموعة أن تطرح الاستفسارات التالية على السيد جروسي. أولاً، عودة مرة أخرى إلى سؤال عن النظام الدولي وتطبيق قواعد القانون الدولي. ما هي أدوات السكرتير العام لضمان الاتساق وعدم الانتقائية في التعامل مع الأزمات المختلفة، بما يعزز مصداقية منظومة العمل متعددة الأطراف والأمم المتحدة ويكفل تطبيقاً متوازناً وعادلاً للمعايير الدولية؟ ثانياً، كيف ترون دور السكرتير العام في تعزيز فاعلية منظومة الأمم المتحدة وتكامل جهودها إزاء القضية الفلسطينية، بما يضمن التنفيذ الفعال للقرارات الدولية ذات الصلة ويدعم تحقيق سلام عادل ودائم في منطقة الشرق الأوسط؟ ثالثاً، كيف ترون سبل تعزيز الالتزام بقواعد القانون الدولي لا سيما في المجال الإنساني، وبما يضمن دعم دور الهيئات الأممية بما فيها وكالة الأونروا وتمكينها من تنفيذ ولاياتها دون انتقاص وفي ظل ظروف غير مواتية في الأراضي الفلسطينية المحتلة؟ أنتقل الآن إلى سؤال بصفتي الوطنية. Mr. Grossi, with the 11th session of the NPT conference convening in less than a week and within an international environment with an alarming trajectory on nuclear rhetoric, erosion of arms control, and reliance on so-called deterrence. What actions would you do, capitalizing on your long-standing experience with the IAEA, to bring to the role of the Secretary General to restore the primacy of the nuclear disarmament and the disarmament agenda in the work of the United Nations? And thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Egypt on behalf of the Arab group. Please.
Thank you very much, distinguished ambassador on the Arab group. When it comes to what tools the Secretary General has to guarantee non-selectivity, I think in terms of addressing international crisis, I think the tools are an honest mind and an attitude that is fair. There is no good war or bad war or big war or less important war or less important breach of international law. I think the Secretary General has to be active on all of those. And of course, it is not surprising that you mention as a segue to that question the issue of Palestine. I think this has been, from the very beginning of this organization, one of the things that have been at the center of every preoccupation. I think that with the adoption of Resolution 2803, opportunities are opening, very difficult ones, of course, in terms of everything that has to be done as part of that process. And I will make sure that together, working with you, working with Israel, working with everybody that has a stake on this, we will try to improve this situation and hopefully bring it to where we all want it to be. You mentioned the humanitarian aspects. These are, of course, very important, and what institutions have been doing there. I think it is very important that in places, in areas of conflict, we make sure that the action of the United Nations is unimpeded, but also that when we act as UN, we do it taking all the necessary precautions so that we do not add to the problems that are there. We have to be self-critical. We have to accept accountability in every institution. Of course, every institution in the UN has a mission which is noble and has to be supported, but we have to be good at it and accountable for what is happening. The NPT is part of my life, as you know very well, and these days becoming even more important in terms of the international agenda. So I hope that by having a Secretary General that understands what the issues related to nuclear disarmament and how important they are in a world that sees an increase in the nuclear arsenals will allow us to have critically a more collaborative dialogue, including if I am here with my successor at the IAEA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands on behalf of the Benelux countries, followed by Jeff, Young European Federalist.
Thank you, Madam President. And I have the honor to speak on behalf of the Benelux countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, and my own country, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And we align with the statement of the European Union. Now, I want to start by thanking Mr. Grossi for his presentation. We consider that the UN needs, above all, a Secretary General with proven leadership and reform credentials, capable of guiding a complex organization in a time of geopolitical tension and financial pressure. We attach particular importance to a Secretary General who can strengthen trust in multilateralism and the international legal order. Someone who can act as a strong convening power across all three pillars and who can proactively contribute to prevention, peace building, and mediation. At the same time, we believe that the role also requires a commitment to the normative foundations of the UN, including human rights, accountability, and adherence to international law. In that regard, could you elaborate on how would you balance impartial mediation and engagement with all parties with the need to speak out and, where necessary, push back when core UN principles are at stake? And finally, could you share your early thinking on the composition of your senior leadership team, including the Deputy Secretary General? How would you approach considerations such as regional balance, gender, and the specific qualities needed to support your priorities and a good functioning UN as a whole? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands on behalf of the Benelux countries, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador and friends from Benelux. Mediation, diplomatic negotiation is at the heart of what the Secretary General can bring to the position and to the mission it has. In my experience, it is something that is incumbent to the leader, but it's a very difficult thing. I have said before, and I deeply believe that impartial is a very lonely place. Impartiality is a very lonely place, but it's something that needs to be done, because impartiality, which does not mean indifference, or does not mean knowing what is good and what is bad, means that you have to understand why you are acting in a certain crisis. It means that you are there to talk to those who are at each other's throats sometimes. And you have to do it being an interlocutor that is accepted by both, because the Secretary General has to bring solutions, has to open doors where none is open, has to build bridges where they do not exist. And what normally happens is that, of course, A would like you to say things they like to hear, and B just the opposite. And when you don't do it, they get mad at you. All right. So this comes with a job. So impartiality is exactly what is needed. Means not taking sides because we are aware of why we are there. We are not there to lecture anybody. We are there to protect the Charter, to preserve international peace and security, and to do that in a way that is effective. And I do have examples in this regard when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, when it comes to the Middle East, etc., etc. So that is how I would approach this, Madam Ambassador. In terms of the senior leadership, I think it is too early to name names or to name countries, but it is, of course, for all of us experienced diplomats, that it is clear that we need to make sure that the management team is reflective of all of us in every sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the civil society organization being drawn for this session. Jeff Europe, the Young European Federalist, and I invite the Assembly to view a pre-recorded video by Jeff. One stop, please. First of all, we don't have the tone for the video, but we have a tone for a mobile device. So could I ask everybody to mute, please, your mobile phones and give a chance to restart the video from Jeff. Thank you. Not working, so we move on with the next group statement.
Due to the limited
now
power
we have
and
the
resources
tone.
of international institutions,
So I wait a second.
in restraining sovereign nations.
We move on with the next speaker. Can we stop the video? We move on with the next speaker, being Trinidad and Tobago on behalf of the Caribbean community. Then we move on with Singapore and Mali, and I hope we have the video then ready. Thank you. Trinidad and Tobago on behalf of the Caribbean community, please.
Madam President, I thank you. I speak today on behalf of the 14 member states of the Caribbean community. We are grateful for the opportunity to participate in this important dialogue and engage with Mr. Grossi, aspiring to the position of Secretary General. We recognize the importance of your work, Mr. Grossi, and we thank you for offering yourself to the international community. Two or three brief questions for you, please. Firstly, The UN has adopted frameworks to embrace the positive use of artificial intelligence technology. Given the rate of technological development, what are your views, particularly as it relates to harnessing these technologies to bridge development gaps within and across member states? Secondly, as you look ahead to the possibility of assuming the role of Secretary General, could you outline the priorities that would guide your first 100 days in office and the immediate actions you would be taking upon assuming that office? And finally, you mentioned it. How do you believe the Secretary General can more effectively utilize the tools available under the Charter, including Article 99, and the good office's functions within today's complex political environment? We note that Article 99 has been formally invoked only 4 times in the organization's history, most recently in December 2023, to draw the Security Council's attention to the escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas. In your view, what principles should guide its use going forward, and how can it be leveraged to strengthen preventative diplomacy and early action? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Trinidad and Tobago on behalf of CARICOM.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Good to see you. On the AI, coming from a very technical organization, we do have a lot of interaction with AI at different levels and with companies doing that. So, and we are addressing, albeit from a narrower perspective, some of the issues that have an impact worldwide. And I know that the Secretary General has taken some initiatives, and of course, we have the Digital Compact that was approved side by side with the Pact of Future that is addressing that. I believe that AI, as all technology, is in and by itself neutral. It can be a force for good. And I think at the moment we are having with AI for Good the process very ably led by my colleague at the ITU in Geneva. I think we have an example of how we can make sure that AI is used in a very positive way as a multiplier of economies and not as a problem for them. In terms of priorities in the first 100 days, of course, we know that sometimes abrupt circumstances come up, and one has to concentrate on those. So it's a very, it's a bit difficult to say what I will be doing first. But quite clearly, we will have to be addressing all the issues that we have been discussing, in particular, open crisis, where I think we will have to show that we mean what we said in terms of being active in the solution or in attempts to solve international crisis. So that is a way to reply. And of course, your connected question on Article 99, again, I would refer to my previous comment in the sense that I believe in a constant monitoring by the ESG and his team with the Security Council and with the membership at large of different ongoing crises. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Singapore on behalf of the Small States Group, followed by Mali, and then the civil society.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and a warm welcome to Mr. Rafael Grossi. I have the honor indeed to deliver this statement on behalf of the Small States Group, which is a cross-regional grouping of small states comprising both developed and developing countries. And more than 50 small states have aligned with this statement, and the full list of countries will be made available after this meeting. Mr. Grossi, you very well know that we are living in a volatile and dangerous period in international relations, characterized by geopolitical tension and conflict. And for small states, an effective multilateral system founded on the principles of the UN Charter and international law is not an option, but an existential necessity. The next Secretary General will play a critical role, not only in defending the UN Charter, but also in reinvigorating and reshaping the role and relevance of the United Nations. we look to the Secretary General to safeguard the interests of all member states, especially the interests of the smallest, weakest, and most vulnerable members of the UN. We do not want a world of might is right, where international law and the sovereignty and territorial integrity of small states are violated with impunity. The members of the Small States Group stand ready to work with the next Secretary General and all member states to strengthen the role of the UN and to defend international law and multilateralism. In the interest of brevity, I will go directly to the questions now. First, what steps will you take, Mr. Grossi, to strengthen the role of the General Assembly, especially at a time when the Security Council has been unable to take decisions? And specifically, how will you support and strengthen the office of the President of the General Assembly? Secondly, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Pact of the Future are landmark outcome documents. They provide a roadmap for global action and partnership. How will you commit to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs and the Pact for the Future? Thirdly, we are at a critical moment when public perception of the UN seems to have become critical and even cynical in many countries. How do you plan to galvanize support for the work of the UN, especially among younger people who represent the future in all our societies? Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Singapore. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. It's good to see you again. On the General Assembly, I think excellent work has been done. Ambassador of Romania is here on the resolution, on the revitalization of the work. The President is here, and we see, at least from my perspective, we see a more visible role of the President and of the General Assembly. I think here a healthy division of labor, of course, is necessary, but is the resonance of the voices of the world come through the General Assembly. So I think the Secretary General will have to have a constant dialogue through the President, but of course with the membership directly, to also get their views on the problems of the day. So you can count on my commitment to listen and to pay attention to the General Assembly. SDGs and Pact of the Future are landmarks, as you rightly said, so we don't need to rewrite them. We don't need to reinterpret them. We don't need to get here in 2 years to have another one, another set. They are very clear, and they have been painfully worked upon here by all of you. In terms of the acceleration, I think the first thing is to recognize that we are not doing well in achieving them. So perhaps doing more of the same will not get us faster there. Recognizing and having a self-critical attitude, for me, is very important in every area of life. And I think we need to recognize this. For this, many things are necessary. And they, I think, link up with other issues like UN reform and other things, where we have to recognize that some things are incumbent upon the Secretary General and the Secretariat, but we also need the support and the understanding of the membership when it comes to being realistic and focused and try to get results as soon as possible. Galvanized support is necessary. I said it in my initial remarks because, you know, people do not have a high opinion, if they have one at all. When we talk about the young generation, I am a father of 8, and I can tell you the UN is not in the list of priorities of young generations. They don't know what the UN does. They don't care, actually, about what they do. Hard as it may sound. So I think it is very important that there is clarity on what we do and how we do it. Communication is so important, and adapt our tools of communication to the world of today, I don't see now. I think we will have to work hard on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mali on behalf of the African Group, followed by Jeff.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the African Group, I would like to thank Mr. Grossi for his presentation, and we have a few questions for him. On peace and security, Africa's exclusion from the permanent membership of the Security Council reflects both a historical injustice and an ongoing structural inequity affecting decision on issues central to the continent. What is your position on the common African position on the UN Security Council reform, and how would you use the convening authority of the office to advance the intergovernmental negotiations? Resolution 2719 created a framework on the EU-led peace support operation to assess contribution, yet implementation has stalled. How would you approach the third-year review, and how would you address the continued political resistance? On development, as you know, remains Africa's foremost priority. How would you review the relationship between the 2030 Agenda and the Agenda 2063? And how would you ensure climate finance mechanism, including the loss and damage fund, are accessible to African countries and adequately resourced? On human rights, how would you integrate human rights across the peace and security and development pillars without politicizations? What is your position on the right to development, and how would you advance the implementation within the UN system? On the representation and institutional governance, African staff in the UN Secretariat face challenges such as constraints in security, contract insecurity, visa constraints, and in some cases, discrimination and retaliation. What measure would you take to address these well-being? And last questions, UN entity across focus on Africa, such as OSA, ECA, and Africa Division in DPPA, DPO, require strengthening. How would you ensure they are adequately resourced? I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mali on behalf of the African Group, please.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador. The common African position is respected. I think it is very clear that as Secretary General, as any Secretary General, the intergovernmental negotiating process is the leading force driving this. But I think there is widespread recognition that the imbalance in terms of African representation is something that needs to be addressed. So in spite of differences that may exist on other issues, I think this is an interesting point, a point where there is a progressive convergence of views. 2719 is very important because it is a clear example of a concrete guidance in terms of allocating resources for peacekeeping operations and operations on the field. We know and we recognize that we have still some gaps in terms of the implementation. The third-year review, I'm sure, will provide an opportunity to look into that, especially among main donors and countries in conflict. So I look forward to that. When it comes to climate, you refer to the Loss and Damage Fund. We've seen it as an achievement of one of the recent COPs. At the same time, we need to recognize that the funds pledged are quite meager, to say the least, when we look at, of course, what has been pledged and the gap between that and what is estimated as needs, it's still quite wide. So I believe, again, that not necessarily having agreements on paper turn into concrete solutions, and we will have to work on that. The human rights question that you are putting, I think this is important because in the context of the UN80, as we all know, there is this proposal to establish the human rights group, which it is an attempt precisely to do what you said in the group's question, to have an integrated approach that is going to be making sure that the human rights ingredient is present in other agendas within the UN. So I think that is very, very important. When it comes to, of course, development is something that is absolutely important, and we see it as a pillar. What else can we say? When we see it as a fundamental pillar of the UN, whether we have it as a right or not, and of course, it is something that has been approved already in the 1980s. We remember the approval of this declaration. But what we need, dear Ambassador, is results. This is what we need when it comes to the work on this pillar. African staff, job insecurity, I think this is something very, very important, and on which, if elected, I will be working with all of you. We must recognize, of course, that reform is needed, that problems exist, but nothing can be done with a demotivated staff. Nothing. So if we are there telling people that what they do is useless, it's not a good idea. So I believe that we have to be able to motivate our staff, to make them efficient, to move into contract situations that are viable, so to say. So I think this is going to be very important. In terms of internal organogrammic changes, it's something that should be tackled if and when I am elected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor again to the young European Federalists with their pre-recorded video. So please screen it.
Honorable chairs, honorable candidates, on behalf of the young European Federalists, I'm asking the following question. Across the world, armed conflicts are flaring up due to the limited power and resources of international institutions in restraining sovereign nation-state actors from pursuing power-driven and unilateral, dangerous international policies. Would your approach for structurally reforming the United Nations involve federalist principles such as subsidiarity and interdependence as central organizing features? More specifically, in the long term, do you see a pathway in which such reforms could gradually strengthen global governance to the point that they would lay the foundation for the emergence of a coherent and democratic world federation capable of addressing global challenges? And what would you do as the next Secretary General of the United Nations to bring about such an outcome? Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Young European Federalists. Please, Mr. Grossi, you have the floor.
A very important point of view. Of course, being a group of European federalists, you bring concepts that are very dear to the European tradition, like subsidiarity and others, that we take very much into account when dealing with international institutions. I think what you express in your question is more aspirational, and I think no one could disagree with the idea of growing or instilling into the UN principles of solidarity and democracy. So hope to be able to having this dialogue with you soon. Thank you.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of New Zealand on behalf of the Global UN 80 Group, followed by Malawi and Equatorial Guinea.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President, for your great steering of these sessions. And colleagues, good afternoon. And Mr. Grossi, thank you so much for your presentation. I ask the following question on behalf of the UN 80 Global Group, a cross-regional group comprising of Barbados, Indonesia, Jordan, Kenya, Norway, Mexico, Senegal, Singapore, and my own country, New Zealand. Mr. Grossi, if elected as the next Secretary-General, what will you do to meaningfully restore trust between the Secretariat and Member States, between the Executive Office of the Secretary-General and the rest of the UN system, and of course, as you've heard from others who have asked you today, the restoring of global confidence in the UN more generally? Thank you.
Really looking forward to that. I think it's very important that we have open channels of communication. It is of concern that a group as important as UNAIDS Global Group sees that there is a need to address a lack of confidence between the Secretariat and states and between the Office of the Secretary General and the rest. I think it's quite a stern assessment. So it's something that I bring with me. I believe, and this is what I try to do at the IEA, to have a constant dialogue with everybody, to have an open door policy. Everybody knows in my agency that anybody can come to see me, and it happens all the time, or through town halls regularly. So I fully believe in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malawi on behalf of the least developed countries.
Thank you. Good afternoon, PGA Excellencies. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the group of least developed countries. And thank you, Mr. Grossi, for your presentation. The LDC group expects that the next Secretary General must restore confidence in a charter-driven multilateral system, rescue the SDGs in LDCs, and ensure that no financial or political pressure is allowed to weaken the UN's dedicated support to the most vulnerable countries. Mr. Grossi, the LDC group would like you to share your observations on the following questions, which reflect the core concerns and expectations of the group. I will also end up with one question in my own capacity. First, on restoring a charter-driven multilateralism. If elected as Secretary General, what concrete steps will you take to re-establish the United Nations as the central forum for addressing the global peace and security, development and financing issues, and how will you ensure that LDCs meaningfully remain at the table to shape these decisions rather than remain on the margins? Secondly, on ensuring adequate resources and support for LDCs, what will be your strategic and innovative approach to mobilize and direct adequate, predictable and concessional resources to LDCs, and how will you reorient the UN development system so that supporting LDCs to achieve the SDGs becomes a visible system-wide priority at country level? Third, regarding protecting dedicated LDC support in a time of UN budget cuts and declining ODA, in the face of ongoing financial constraints, how will you ensure that resources and dedicated support to LDCs, including to the LDC dedicated UN mechanisms, are protected and strengthened rather than reduced? And what specific measures will you put in place to ring-fence this support from across-the-board cuts? Fourth, as the UN faces unprecedented challenges from within and outside, what strategic approach will you undertake to reinvigorate the UN's development pillar to deliver transformative system-wide support for LDCs, ensuring that the promise of the UN Charter translates into tangible, lasting progress for those furthest behind? Then finally, in my own national capacity, what innovative strategic
I thank the distinguished representative of Malawi on behalf of a least developed country, sustainable development at the end. Please, Mr. Grossi, and we will hear next Equatorial Guinea and Palau.
Thank you very much for those questions, including the last one. I think I got it. In terms of the general problematic of LDCs, but also of other special groups, I think you have well-defined sets of priorities in the Doha, Awaza, and Antigua and Barbuda agendas. I think these 10-year programs are very clear in laying out the specific and more, I would say, urgent themes that are fundamental for least developed countries, and of course the landlocked and the small island developing states that are in this group, that I don't want to lump them together, but in a way, conceptually at least, to say, as I think I indicated before, that they should not be a collateral to this general trend that comes into view when we see the steep reduction or decrease in official development assistance and figures in this area. You mentioned the idea of a strategic approach. I think I would be listening to you instead of me trying to impose on anybody a strategic approach. I think the priorities of the groups, especially the most vulnerable groups, are very clear. What the Secretary General can do for you is to keep the importance and highlighting them at every opportunity, in particular in the dialogue with international finance institutions that needs to be cooperative, that needs to be mutually respectful, and of course with individual actors. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Equatorial Guinea on behalf of the group of Portuguese-speaking countries, followed by Palau and Japan.
Excellency, Madam President, Excellency, Mr. Grossi, thank you for your briefing. I have the honor of speaking on behalf of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries. The CPLP spans 4 continents and is home of over 280 million people. United by a common language, shared heritage, and strong cultural ties. We are also connected by the ocean, which is central to our economies, our culture, and our future. We attach the highest importance to the United Nations and to the principles of multilateralism. In this spirit, and given the Secretary General's central role in guiding the organization, we have consistently held that the Secretary General must be fully committed to advancing meaningful UN reform and upholding the values and purposes enshrined in the Charter. We also underline the need to ensure the full and balanced implementation of the UN's main pillars, peace and security, human rights and development, as the foundation for a more effective, credible, and responsive United Nations. In this context, Mr. Grossi, Excellency, we would welcome your views on the following. How would you position the ocean within the United Nations agenda and advance concrete action in areas such as implementation of the BBNG agreement, combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and mobilizing financing for a sustainable blue economy? I thank you. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Equatorial Guinea on behalf of the group of Portuguese-speaking countries. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Muito obrigado. Infelizmente não podemos falar português, but I will try to answer to your question saying that, of course, the Portuguese-speaking community is a transatlantic community and beyond, is a community that reflects values and has unique features. Of course, based on historic achievements of sailors and all, it is obvious that ocean, also because of geography, has such a central importance in your preoccupations. And I think BBNJ, as law of the sea, and as many other achievements in terms of international law, the problems related to sea level rising and all, and these new trends that are appearing must find an adequate reflection in our preoccupations and work. So I can assure you that we will be attaching importance and priority to those and working with you and your group on those. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Palau on behalf of the Alliance of Small Island States.
Madam President, thank you for convening this important dialogue, and I also wish to thank Mr. Grossi for your interaction with us today. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the 39 members of the Alliance of Small Island States. And as a group of countries in special situations, the credibility of the United Nations lies in its ability to respond to the unique circumstances of SIDS, correct longstanding inequities, and deliver results for the most vulnerable. In this regard, allow me to pose the following questions. 1, how will you, as Secretary General, ensure that the UN system is more accessible, better coordinated, and tailored to the unique vulnerabilities of SIDS to better and more meaningfully support the full implementation of the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS? And my second question is a follow-up to your response to my colleague from Papua New Guinea on behalf of the Pacific Island Forum. How will you use your leadership to accelerate global ambition and action on climate change, particularly to keep 1.5 degrees within reach, while ensuring that SIDS receive scaled-up, predictable, and accessible finance for adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage in line with international commitments? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Palau.
Thank you very much, Palau. Thank you, Ambassador, for that. As I said before, I'm very much aware of the Antigua and Barbuda agenda and what is there, and also, as in previous answers I provided today, on the unique vulnerabilities of countries like yours. Since I have visited the region, I am aware of that. The global ambition on climate and what we need to do there are at the heart of my mission already today in the job I do today as head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. So I would like to have a reinvigorated dialogue on energy matters from the UN. I think there is a bit of a deficit here, and would like to work together with those having an existential approach to these issues, and also others that do not see it as an existential thing, but as a driver for their economies. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. As 1.5 hours have passed, and as we have already touched on the 3 principles of the United Nations, peace and security, development, and human rights, I invite now again for the second segment of the session, while there is still interest from member states to speak on the first segment. We still have actors on the list, so if your microphone is not green and you want to speak, please press the button now as well. We will also hear again civil society questions, which will be interspersed with questions from member states. Continuing with the list, next on the speaker is Japan on behalf of the group of 4, followed by Uganda and Australia.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to ask a question to Mr. Grossi on behalf of the group of 4, consisting of Brazil, India, Germany, and my own country, Japan. The G4 plays a pivotal role in advancing the reform of the Security Council. The Security Council bears primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. However, the relevance of the Council has been questioned, as its composition is a mere snapshot of the international environment from 80 years ago. As the next Secretary General, what specific initiatives do you intend to take to reform the Security Council? Since I have the floor, I would like to ask 2 questions in my national capacity. Japan strongly believes in standing by the principles of the UN Charter and defending the international order based on the rule of law. I would therefore like to ask about your strategy for the UN to promote the observance of development of international law, including through strengthening support to legal institutions such as ICJ and ILC. Second question, amid growing uncertainty in the international community with a number of conflicts, Japan believes the perspective of human security, which links development and peace seamlessly, is indispensable for addressing existential challenges. How do you mobilize multilateral systems centering on the UN agencies, which often criticize for silos and duplication of functions? As a chief executive officer, behind this issue, we observe that a lot of vested interests by organizations themselves as well as vested interests of member states. In order to achieve results, how do you lead the organization and system? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Japan on behalf of the Group of Four, please.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador. Good to see you again. On the reform of the UN Security Council, of course, this is driven by you, by member states. The Secretary General can play a role in terms of facilitation, in terms of providing with an environment that would be conducive to a good and fair discussion among all. I don't see the Secretary General as having a magic wand to solve such a complex matter, but we recognize the importance of it and hope to be working and having the conversation with everybody on this very topical issue. We know that time has passed, we know that circumstances have changed, but of course coming to a solution that will be good for all is a challenge ahead of all of us, and I look forward to having that discussion with you. I think it's important what you mentioned in terms of the development of international law, because for all the concern we have and we see in terms of the breaches of international law and the Charter, there is gradual, as the Charter itself says, gradual development of international law. In our conversation today, there have been mentions to BBNJ, and there are other multilateral instruments that are in the making. So I believe that as a community, as an international community, we have not lost faith in international law as the guiding universal principle for all of us. The mobilization, as in your last point, of international will and institutional ability to move against silos and the typical criticism that exists, I do share that point of view, and this is why I believe that as Secretary General, working with you, we will be able to address those issues and enhance the credibility of the institution by making it akin to the problems that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement, followed by Australia and Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the 121 member states of the non-aligned movement. We welcome the holding of this informal dialogue to exchange views with the candidates for the position of the Secretary General of the United Nations presented by member states. The non-aligned movement would like to raise the following set of questions to the candidates for the position of the Secretary General. What concrete measures would you propose to further strengthen multilateralism and international cooperation in light of their erosion resulting inter alia from non-compliance with the international obligations? 2, what concrete steps would you take to fully implement and strengthen multilingualism across the United Nations system, including in intergovernmental meetings, timely official documentation, and digital platforms, as well as ensuring adequate resources, institutional accountability, and equal treatment of all official languages? In light of the organization's liquidity constraints, how would you safeguard development mandates in this upheaval, and how will you facilitate member states' payments of their contributions, including in cases where there are external circumstances beyond their control in making their payments? How do you assess the impact of unilateral cohesive measures on the ability of affected development countries to achieve SDGs and fully implement the 2030 agenda? What concrete actions would you promote in your capacity as Secretary General to strengthen the role of the United Nations in opposing such measures, urging the elimination and promoting mechanisms to prevent their application? What measures would you propose to ensure that these principles are reflected in the equitable and effective support to all member state representations in the discharge of their responsibilities? I thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. Please, Mr.
Thank you very much. In terms of having concrete measures to strengthen multilateralism, I think by having a UN, as I say in my vision, by having a UN that works, we will be doing a lot in revitalizing the institution, giving people faith in the institution, having even those who are critical of the UN among the membership rekindle with it, like it again, be willing to pay again, because the institution is really delivering. Multilingualism is fundamental. As a speaker of different languages, I am a convinced individual about this. Usually, and this is what happened in my own organization, we see that as a problem of internal mechanisms with the conference services systems and how to address normally big backlogs in terms of documentation and so on. So I think we will have to make good use of the human resources that we have, of the new technologies that we have, of course, always respecting the human talent as a priority in this area. Development mandates and payments, I think I addressed just now. I think we have to work with everybody. We have to convince everybody that the UN is the best possible investment, much better than wars, and cheaper as well. Unilateral coercive measures, of course, you know that legally speaking, there are debates about this. What we have to make sure is that when these are applied regrettably, humanitarian law, international law is respected. But again, I would come, dear Ambassador, to my initial point. By having a UN that's credible and works, I think that is the best antidote for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Australia, also speaking on behalf of New Zealand.
Madam President, Excellencies, Mr. Grossi, I have the honour to address you today on behalf of New Zealand and my own country, Australia. At a time of heightened global uncertainty and complex international challenges, the United Nations' ability to fulfil its core mandate rests on its institutional credibility, capability and capacity. Institutional credibility requires bold and principled leadership, including the ability to deploy the Secretary-General's good officers with political courage and effect. Institutional capability requires a UN that's focused on upholding all three pillars of its work and translates early warning into early action. Institutional capacity requires experienced and ethical management and realistic and fit-for-purpose mandates that sharpen effectiveness and delivery. How do you think the UN 80 initiative is working to align leadership, authority and resources to restore confidence in the UN and enable it to deliver results against the three pillars? How would you build on the UN 80 initiative to make it more effective? Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good offices and the work of the Secretary General are at the center of everything. This is why we need a Secretary General that is able to deliver on all those fronts, and what I have been trying to describe to you in terms of my own approach to things. With regard to UN 80 and whether it's working in addressing the three pillars effectively, I think, as I said in the beginning, it's a first step. So not yet, of course, but it is not the aim of the exercise. My impression is that UN 80 was an indispensable first step into trying to have a good diagnosis before the therapy comes. There are certain steps that are moving into that area of addressing problems and trying to solve issues, but it is my impression that it will be a joint effort for all of us, including me, if elected, to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan on behalf of the landlocked developing countries, and then we move to the member states in their national capacities.
Madam President, Mr. Grossi, dear colleagues, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the group of landlocked developing countries. Landlocked developing countries, or LLDCs, represent 32 nations and over 500 million people. Their defining challenge is geographic. Without direct access to the sea, they depend on transit through neighboring countries. This results in higher trade costs, longer delays, and greater vulnerability to external shocks. These structural constraints continue to shape their development path and limit their full participation in the global economy. And we welcome the convening of this interactive dialogue, which provides an important opportunity to engage with candidates for the position of Secretary General at a critical time for the multilateral system. We would appreciate your views on how to strengthen system-wide coherence so that global commitments translate into the measurable progress at the regional and country levels, including through enhanced engagement of United Nations resident coordinators and country teams, and the effective integration of LLDC priorities into UN Sustainable Development Cooperation frameworks. Furthermore, we would like also to hear from you how will you envisage strengthening the capacity, resources, and institutional role of the Office of the High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, so that it can effectively fulfill its mandate's functions, particularly in supporting coordinated follow-up, mobilizing international support, enhancing advocacy, and assisting LLDCs in the implementation. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan on behalf of the landlocked developing countries.
Of course, thank you very much, Ambassador, for that. Of course, AWASA includes all these points, not surprisingly, transport, connectivity, all these points are so crucial for landlocked developing countries. And as I said, they are well defined. The issue is how better to integrate those. You mentioned it at two levels. You mentioned it at the level of the wide implementation of the agendas, and also institutionally and organically in terms of the Office of the High Representative. I believe, and I think you were right in pointing to the issue of the regional coordinators and the country teams, the resident coordinators, sorry, and the country teams as essential in terms of the delivery that has to be there. In my opinion, the office, of course, has a very, very special job to do in terms of integrating efficiently with other parts of the Secretariat, and I intend to enhance its role in this regard.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Andorra, still on behalf of the group of the Francophonie ambassadors.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le groupe francophone vous remercie, Monsieur Grossi, pour l'exposé de votre vision stratégique. À l'heure où les Nations Unies doivent répondre à des crises systémiques et à une fragmentation croissante de l'ordre international, nous estimons que la question du multilinguisme, loin d'être accessoire, constitue un levier stratégique pour renforcer la légitimité, l'efficacité et l'inclusivité du système multilatéral. Nous sommes convaincus que la pleine mise en œuvre des trois piliers de l'organisation est indissociable d'un multilinguisme effectif et d'un multilatéralisme renouvelé, plus inclusif et plus ouvert. À l'égard du deuxième segment, sur les trois piliers des Nations Unies, on a trois questions. Depuis la publication du cadre stratégique pour le multilinguisme en mars 2024, aucune directive ou circulaire administrative opérationnelle n'a été adoptée. Dans ce contexte, quelle nouvelle impulsion entendez-vous apporter à la mise en œuvre de ce cadre stratégique? Deuxièmement, quelles mesures concrètes envisagez-vous pour rétablir une partie réelle entre les langues de travail du secrétariat, en particulier entre le français et l'anglais, et pour garantir que le multilinguisme soit pleinement intégré dans les activités liées à la paix, au développement et aux droits humains? Troisièmement, comment entendez-vous intégrer le recours croissant aux nouvelles technologies, y compris l'intelligence artificielle, en appui des services linguistiques composés de professionnels de haute qualité indispensables au secrétariat aussi bien qu'aux États membres? Et en relation à un multilatéralisme en réseau, dans un contexte où les défis globaux exigent une mobilisation élargie, quelle est votre vision d'un multilatéralisme en réseau permettant une participation plus structurée des institutions régionales aux côtés des États membres? comment comptez-vous valoriser les complémentarités opérationnelles avec ces acteurs, notamment l'Organisation internationale de la francophonie, comme vecteur de mise en œuvre des 3 piliers des Nations unies, dans une logique de rationalisation des efforts et de recentrage sur les priorités des Nations unies? Le groupe des ambassadeurs francophones demeure attaché à un multilatéralisme inclusif fondé sur la diversité linguistique et culturelle, condition essentielle de sa légitimité et de son efficacité. Nous serons attentifs à votre capacité à traduire ces principes en engagement concret. Je vous remercie.
Merci. I thank the distinguished representative of Andorra on behalf of the group of La Francophonie ambassadors, please.
Et vous faites bien de rester attentif parce que je serai actif dans ces domaines. Je reconnais pleinement, si vous voulez, la non-accessoirité de la question du multilinguisme. C'est essentiel, ça va au cœur de notre travail diplomatique. C'est vrai que parfois, ces questions sont marginalisées par rapport à d'autres priorités administratives dans les organisations internationales. En tout cas, ce n'est pas le cas dans l'AIEA. Vous pouvez consulter vos collègues à Vienne là-dessus. Je regrette que depuis l'adoption de documents stratégiques, aucune directive ait été appliquée. On va y travailler ensemble, j'espère. Les nouvelles technologies, je viens de mentionner, je crois, lors de ma réponse à la question de nos amis du groupe non alignés, un peu, à la question de l'introduction des nouvelles technologies. Évidemment, c'est une question sensible pour nos amis qui travaillent dans le service de traduction et d'interprétation, mais je crois qu'il y a une possibilité de s'en servir pour être sûr d'avoir un accès à toutes les langues officielles, en particulier le français et l'anglais, dans le travail des Nations Unies. Les chapitres 8 de la Charte, évidemment, articule, je crois, a articulé déjà pour nous tous cette, je dirais, rapport constructif qui doit exister entre les organisations régionales et les Nations Unies, y compris l'Organisation de la francophonie. Alors, travaillons là-dessus.
Merci. I now give the floor to the next distinguished representative of the civil society organization, the Sustainable Investments and Alliances for Africa. Please.
Yes, Madam President, Mr. Grossi, and distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends. Thank you for this opportunity you've given to civil society to engage in this dialogue with candidates for the Secretary General position. My question relates to peace and security. If elected as Secretary General, what specific mechanisms will you introduce to ensure that peace building is not dominated by major powers, but instead empowers regional actors, independent brokers, and community platforms to actively shape and sustain peace processes? How can we create peace on earth by 2030? Rotary, which helped draft the UN Charter, is creating peace zones by enlisting 10,000 cities, 40 million people, to be directly.
I thank the distinguished representative of the NGO, Civil Society Organization, Sustainable Investments and Alliances for Africa.
Thank you very much for that question. I think the issue is a very important one, but I don't think it necessitates the introduction of new mechanisms. I think it requires the Secretary General himself or herself to make sure that this doesn't happen, that the big powers or medium powers or any group monopolizes, as you say, any efforts in peace. You can rest assured that if elected, that will not be the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now hear member states in their national capacities. May I remind you that the speaking time is 2 minutes for delegations speaking in national capacity. This relates also to the answering time by the candidates of 2 minutes. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba, followed by Angola and Armenia.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Distinguido señor Rafael Grossi, Cuba agradece una vez más la oportunidad de sostener estos diálogos interactivos con los candidatos a secretario general de manera abierta, transparente e inclusiva. Nos alineamos a las preguntas formuladas por el G67, el MNOAL y AOSIS y quisiéramos plantear las siguientes 2 preguntas en capacidad nacional. Ante las agudas tensiones geopolíticas en el contexto internacional actual, ¿cuál sería su proyección para garantizar el cumplimiento de sus deberes como secretario general y la Secretaría en su condición de funcionarios internacionales responsables únicamente ante la organización? ¿Cómo garantizaría un tratamiento a los derechos humanos en los mecanismos de Naciones Unidas que sea universal, imparcial, no selectivo, libre de politización, dobles raseros y enfoques punitivos? Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, distinguido representante de Cuba. Creo que simplemente cumpliendo con el juramento de respetar y de defender la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, esos principios y esos compromisos con la paz y la seguridad internacional y el tratamiento justo estarán siempre bien tutelados. Puede usted contar con mi compromiso en ese sentido.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Angola.
Madam President, Mr. Grossi, distinguished delegates, Angola welcomes the holding of this first interactive dialogue and appreciate the opportunity to hear Mr. Mariano Grossi's vision for the leadership of the United Nations. For the sake of brevity, allow us to make the following questions. First, Mr. Grossi, in today's complex geopolitical environment, how do you intend to ensure the impartial and non-selective application of international human rights law and international humanitarian law to preserve the neutrality and credibility of the United Nations? Second, at a time when the organization faces significant liquidity challenges, it is essential to ensure transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the use of resources while safeguarding priority mandates. In this regard, how do you intend to address the current financial constraints to ensure that development and peace and security priorities, particularly in Africa, are not adversely affected? Third, many African countries are significantly underrepresented or non-represented in key UN structures in both staffing and high-level decision-making. What strategies and concrete measures do you envisage to implement to address this persistent geographical imbalance to better reflect modern geopolitical realities, improve geographical distribution in the Secretariat, and boost recruitment from underrepresented and non-represented nations? Fourth, the United Nations and the African Union maintain a robust partnership in peace and security. How do you foresee your engagement with the African Union to further strengthen the cooperation between the two organizations, including using your good offices and political capital to accelerate the implementation of
I thank the distinguished representative of Angola. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Embaixador. Human rights law, humanitarian law, of course, applies to them. The same commitment that I was referring to when responding to my Cuban colleague. They are absolutely essential, part of one of the pillars, and in that regard, they deserve the full attention of the future Secretary General. Liquidity crisis and the problems in terms of financial constraints that may exist will make us and Secretary General especially responsible to make sure, as I was saying, that the development pillar in particular is not the variable to adjust problems in financing other activities of the United Nations. The underrepresentation in posts, let me tell you that in the IEA, as I was saying, we have been redressing this, and in particular the African group has been the biggest or the largest in improving in terms of percentage points when it comes to geographical representation. I expect to have the same approach here, if elected. Your last point is very, very important for me. The possibility to be working together with the African Union is essential. I was referring earlier to Chapter 8, Resolution 2719, and the different instruments that we have to try to work together. I think what is still lacking is more interaction between the two colleges and between the two communities to address specific problems, in particular when it comes to peacekeeping operations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Armenia, followed by Namibia and the next civil society organization.
Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Grossi, Excellencies. At a time when the UN's effectiveness in prevention and sustaining peace is increasingly questioned, including in situations where peace agreements are within reach but remain fragile, how would you strengthen the Secretary General's proactive role, both in early warning and in accompanying and institutionalizing peace to make them irreversible? We also align with the concerns on vulnerable countries as reflected by Kyrgyzstan for the LLDCs and the Philippines for the mix. I thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador. As you said it in your question, the Secretary General must be proactive, must never stop for a single minute. And this is the approach I have been taken at the IAEA. It will be the same here if elected. Thank you very much.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Namibia, followed by the civil society organization Research Institute for Japan's Globalization.
President, Your Excellencies, Mr. Grossi, the role of the SG is a critical one, not just for the management of the premier global organization, but for the important contribution that the position makes towards the maintenance of international peace and security, the promotion of human rights, and the realization of sustainable development for the vast majority of member states across our globe. Mr. Grossi, Namibia congratulates you on your nomination and acknowledges the positive contributions you have made thus far towards a better world. In September 2024, world leaders adopted the most wide-ranging international agreement in many years, namely the Pact for the Future, that has brought a renewed impetus towards the implementation of the SDGs. This notable agreement has reinvigorated the multilateral system and has given direction in a number of important global multilateral thematic issues, yet your vision statement makes no reference whatsoever to it. My question is, what is your vision to implementing the Pact for the Future, and how best will you support member states in its implementation ahead of the 2028 review? In the Pact for the Future, world leaders also agreed that Africa should be treated as a priority and a special case as far as the reform of the UNSC is concerned. What is your understanding of this unique decision taken by member states, and how would your office support this implementation? It is commonly held that women lead. Where women lead, peace follows. How would you fully realize the WPS agenda to address global hotspots that are plaguing the world? I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Namibia. Please, Mr.
Thank you very much. The Pact of Future, very important, of course, due in no small measure to your efforts. As I said, with regards to other important international agendas, they are there. They do not need to be redefined. So it is up to us to implement what was agreed, knowing very well that circumstances evolve and that we have to adjust to the new challenges that we are having. So, as you rightly said, the review that we are going to having of the Pact of the Future will allow us in a little less than a couple of years to adjust whatever needs to be adjusted. In any case, Africa remains at the center of all these efforts, as we have seen, in particular, in the implementation of the second pillar for development. Thank you very much.
I now invite the Assembly to view a pre-recorded video by the Research Institute for Japan's Globalization, followed by Romania and Poland.
My name is Takeo Harada, President of the Research Institute for Japan's Globalization. As the United Nations redefines development amid demographic change, technological disruption, and geopolitical fragmentation, how would you operationalize AI-enabled governance for inclusive and sustainable growth? Specifically, how would you implement AI-driven intergenerational knowledge transfer, a shift of value creation from local to central levels through trusted data, and functional regional integration via logistics and data systems? And what concrete institutional reforms would you prioritize to make this actionable? Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much. Technology in its different ways has, throughout history, enabled human society to improve. I'm not sure whether AI-enabled governance and approaches like this are perhaps widely shared. What I'm sure is that AI is an instrument, and it must be an instrument for good. In terms of what the UN system is doing, as I referred to earlier, the AI for Good initiative is a good one, I believe, and it allows us to do just that. It hasn't been brought to fruition yet, but it is clear that widely accessible data systems, AI-driven economies, and so on, should be levers, should be helping economic growth and equality. Of course, it will be up to us to apply those wisely.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Romania, followed by Poland and the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam President. I very much welcome this interactive dialogue. I'm almost tempted to advertise the interest of my delegation to open up for a coalition of countries to speak earlier, but it's a good investment in multilateralism. Mr. Grossi, I want to take a step back, and of course, as we are faced with an erosion of trust, but also an erosion of the UN authority in general, that you spoke about it as well. There are also assessments that say that the international rules-based order that has been created 8 years ago, exactly the same time as United Nations, has been eroded or at least seriously undermined in the past period, a number of conflicts. I would be interested in your perspectives on the state of the international order and, of course, the role of the United Nations in restoring trust in the multilateral system and its efficiency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that. The erosion of the UN authority is there, unfortunately, and we have to recognize that. I think that this process that we are having now, and hopefully a good conclusion of it, will be a step in the right direction in terms of reburnishing the appeal of the UN, making us more attractive and efficient. Doing that, I am convinced, will generate a virtuous circle of recognition. When the UN again is at the center of solution of international conflicts, when the UN is seen as a lever for development, when the UN is not seen just as a declaratory platform, I think this authority that is being eroded, I think will start regain strength. One important thing, which is encouraging, I believe, is that for all that we can say in terms of this erosion that you mentioned, and I share, what we see is that there is no loss of faith in the institution itself and in the existence of the UN. People may be saying the UN is not working well or the UN is having a gap here or there, but we don't see people saying we should finish with the UN. It is not what we need. We need, I don't know, smaller institutions or platforms, etc. This is our global platform, our common house. We need to protect it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Poland.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Director General Grossi, I think we've heard a lot today about the UN, but perhaps not enough about the candidate, and hence my question. You have led the IAEA for the last 6 years or so through difficult geopolitical times, but also challenges with technology and peaceful uses. And you also run marathons, as I understand. I don't know which is more pertinent to the job of Secretary General of the UN, but if you could provide us with an example or a few of your experience or elements of your experience, what would be the most useful or relevant, pertinent element that you could bring to the table if selected for the post of Secretary General? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there are a few.
I thank the distinguished representative of Poland, and I now give the floor to Mr. Grossi.
I'm a runner, you know.
Yeah, but rules of procedure are really...
You are right. I'm sorry for that, Madam President. There are a few runners around the room, by the way, that I know.
Run next week the half marathon. You can join.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fantastic. That would be great. But no, certainly. Well, marathons are good in terms of resilience, and they really do something for your character. We had the beautiful Vienna Marathon. And kudos to Vienna for that. But no, in terms of experience, I would say there are many things. But being with I mentioned that being with my staff under fire, it's unforgettable, because when that happens, you understand the nobility of the effort. When you are there and you are asking yourself, or people ask you, should we continue or should we stop? And when you see your people around you saying, no, we have to continue, we have a mission, we have to get to where we were going, and you know where we were going. So I think that it's an unforgettable thing that has been transformational for the IEA, I believe, and for me as a person as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation, followed by Canada and Liechtenstein.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Российская Федерация исходит из необходимости выбрать наиболее достойного кандидата, который, в нашем понимании, будет соответствовать самым высоким стандартам профессионализма, компетентности, приверженности целям и принципам устава во всей их совокупности и взаимосвязи. Господин Гросси, вам уже задавали сегодня вопросы и про реформенные инициативы, и про кадровый состав секретариата в случае вашего избрания. В этой связи ограничусь следующими вопросами. Вправе ли, на ваш взгляд, генсекретарь руководствоваться решениями Генассамблеи, которые носят неконсенсусный характер и выходят за рамки ее полномочий по Уставу ООН, особенно в ситуациях, когда вопрос находится на рассмотрении Совета Безопасности? Считаете ли вы, что принципы Устава ООН можно ранжировать по важности? Вправе ли, на ваш взгляд, секретариат толковать Устав, самовольно определяя, в каких случаях применяется принцип самоопределения, а в каких преобладает принцип территориальной целостности? Я благодарю за внимание.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much. The Charter is here, and it's very clear in terms of what belongs to whom. And I think you're very right in referring to the division of labor that exists and that needs to be respected. When an issue is being dealt with by the Security Council, it is there. And there are other opportunities, and in history we had opportunities where the General Assembly stepped in. So I think, of course, the Charter, which is an integral document and that has to be read in its integrity, is there, and it doesn't need interpretation. It needs to be upheld, and this is what I would try to do as Secretary General, if elected.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Canada, followed by Liechtenstein and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you, Madam President. And since we didn't get a chance to ask a question this morning during the dialogue with Madam Bachelet, I just want to really thank you and tell you how much we appreciate this process and the transparency that it gives the selection of the SG, the next SG. And I want to thank the candidates really for taking it so seriously. That being said, I think we can also tweak the format a little bit for the next time we do this in 5 years or so to make sure that we as member states are more disciplined in how we ask questions, how much time we're given, and that candidates also have the time they really need to answer those questions. And I thank you, Madam President, for being that flexible and giving them extra time on some of these issues, just so that we can really make this dialogue as interactive as possible. I'll go straight to the question. Mr. Grossi, so nice to see you again. I think you've been asked a number of questions today about good offices and mediation. I just want to go one step further. So in the context of the current conflict in Iran and more broadly the Gulf region, what would you be doing as Secretary General right now to try to bring this conflict to an end? I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Canada, and I give the floor to Mr. Grossi.
Well, as you know, in my current capacity, I have been dealing with this issue for many, many years. I approach it with great respect. And I believe, I always believed that there should be a role for the UN, in particular if, as we all hope, the current negotiations bring the belligerents closer to some form of arrangement, understanding, or peace. As we know, this is an issue that is multifaceted. There is a nuclear chapter, which is the one I know, but there are many others that are there and that would, I think, benefit enormously from the participation of the United Nations. My approach would be to, of course, that is not up to the SG to decide, but to show that the UN could make a tangible, real contribution to the solution of a crisis like this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Liechtenstein, followed by the Islamic Republic of Iran and Lithuania.
Thank you, President. All protocol observed. I have two relatively basic questions. The first is, what according to you is the basis for the power of the Secretary General? For us, it is the fact that the SG represents the architecture reflected in the Charter based on international law, sovereign equality of all member states in a manner that is visible, that is articulate, and that is action-oriented. Now, that is for us not mainly a question of principle or of morality. That's a question of, that's a pretty hard political reality for us, because honestly, what else is there? I have no problem imagining some of the most powerful people asking the question, how many divisions does the SG have? And we all know the answer to that, and I think you also recognize the question. I'm not trying to get you to agree with me, I'm just trying to understand what, in your view, the basis of the power of the SG is. The second is I'm very interested in your views on how you make decisions. If you can elaborate a bit on how you make decisions, because obviously that is the biggest part of your job, and you're doing that now on a daily basis. You've talked a bit about inclusivity in consultations. Who do you choose for your inner circle, and what do you expect from your inner circle? And ultimately, the decision is yours. It's your responsibility. What are the criteria that you apply? And very specifically, do you think in the theory of decision-making there is a role of emotional intelligence in decision-making, or do you believe that's something that's best left out of decision-making? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Liechtenstein. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much. Very thoughtful questions. I would like to think, if I may, redefine a point of on your question. I like to talk about the authority of the Secretary General as opposed to the power, because as you rightly said, the Secretary General does not have many divisions or material power as such, but it has an authority that is a noble word that is derived from the Charter. And that is supported by all. So while being truth that the Secretary General would never be able to match the material power of states, it has this support, and it embodies, in a certain sense, this common idea of moderating force, a force for good, a bridge builder, which is not impossible, in my opinion. In terms of the decision making, I think you are right in reminding that at the end of the day, the decision is to the person that is in charge, but decisions need to be well informed. I believe, in particular, in an organization which is very technical as mine, I believe in good advice, but ultimately I take the decisions, of course, where I am. So, and in terms of inner circles and the rest, I imagine being someone who loves football and who is a coach for young people. I like to see that as an analogy of a good coach. A good coach takes the decision but knows how to pick and choose the best around.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran, followed by Lithuania and the next civil society organization.
Thank you, Madam President. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Islamic Republic of Iran views the Secretary General not as a mere administrative official, but as the guardian of the UN Charter. The key issue is whether the next Secretary General will firmly uphold the UN Charter, particularly the principle of the prohibition of the use of force under Article 2, Paragraph 4, peremptory norm of international law. Recent acts of aggression by the Israeli regime and the United States against my country, Iran, including unlawful attacks on safeguarded nuclear facilities, raise a critical concern. Can silence or ambiguity in the face of such clear violations be reconciled with this responsibility? In this context, our clear questions are, will the next Secretary General take an explicit and public position without hesitation in response to blatant violations of the Charter in any and all parts of the world? Will the next Secretary General be willing, even in the face of major powers, to fully uphold the principles of impartiality and independence enshrined in Article 100? And ultimately, will the next Secretary General defend in practice, not merely in words, the equal rights of all sovereign states, in particular the rights outlined in Article 105 of the Charter, or will we continue to witness their persistence of double standards? We believe that the Secretary General should be the voice of justice, a defender of international law, and one who does not remain silent in the face of clear violations of the Charter. In our view, the credibility of the United Nations now more than ever depends on a principled and responsible choice. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much for those points, very important ones in terms of the upholding of the chart, which is evident and very clear. It must be there. I hope that we will have, and I could be for you, a Secretary General that would not only take positions, but would also act upon and be a part of the solution to problems dealing with the use of force in international relations. Impartiality, I think I addressed in the beginning, is a very difficult psychological and political exercise, but it must be exercised in full and at all times, avoiding, like you say, double standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lithuania.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Grossi, thank you for sharing your vision and for engaging with us in this dialogue. Lithuania takes note of your assessment that the UN stands at the inflection point and that the international system is under strain. We agree that this requires not only institutional effectiveness, but also the ability to respond effectively to new and evolving risks to peace and security. Hybrid threats are often designed to blur the line between war and peace, complicate attribution, delay collective response, and ultimately weaken democratic resilience. Hybrid threats manifest across different domains, including information space, cybersecurity, maritime security, and critical infrastructure, and are increasingly used to destabilize states and whole regions. In that sense, they also test whether the UN can act early, stay relevant, and help prevent escalation. My question is, do you believe that the United Nations is adequately equipped to address hybrid threats? And if not, how would you ensure that such threats receive sustained attention across the UN system, including in prevention and early warning efforts? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Lithuania. Please, Mr. Grossi.
I think it is a very good question. The nature of conflict as such is evolving with the use of technologies, with operations also by non-state actors, and with all sorts of factors, external factors that do not conform to the traditional way to understand conflict. Some of what you are saying has been seen in recent discussions about peacekeeping operations and the ability of those who have to have the necessary technologies and be equipped with the necessary means to address some of these challenges on the field. So I would say that whereas I don't see the UN totally unprepared for that, I don't see that, I do share with you the impression that this is an area where we should enhance our work, not only here, but by using experience and the talent that we have in the system, like, for example, UNODC in Vienna and other organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the civil society organization Equality Now. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking on behalf of Equality Now, a worldwide human rights organization dedicated to securing the legal and systemic change needed to end discrimination against all women and girls. Beyond ensuring gender parity within the United Nations, what will you do to promote and protect transformative gender equality, both internally at the UN, by eliminating sexual harassment, for example, and externally when women and girls in all their diversity are bearing the brunt of gender-based violence, including conflict-related sexual violence and tech-facilitated gender-based violence? Not one single country has achieved legal equality between women and men, according to the World Bank, and even the word gender is under attack by some member states, as we recently saw the Commission on the Status of Women. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank the distinguished representative of Equality Now. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much for that question, which is very pertinent. I think that this is not a matter of terminology, it's a real problem that we need to be addressing. Protecting women and young girls is something which is essential, and we are far from having reached the point that we should be reaching. There are important efforts carried out by the United Nations, and I think we have to recognize that some of those have been bearing fruit in terms of field deployments, in terms of sexual abuse. In all these areas, I have seen progress being made. But of course, it's a permanent effort, and you do well in reminding us that we should continue and do better. Thank you.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Observer State of Palestine, followed by Djibouti and Peru.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Grossi, for your comments and your responses. You won't be surprised by the question coming from Palestine. It's about the UN and the staff that you have mentioned. We live in a period where the UN is subject to attacks, where we've seen UN personnel killed, maimed, detained, abused. Many of those were Palestinian nationals or operating in Palestine. This often starts with incitement against the UN and against its agencies, its personnel, sometimes within these walls. As the face of the UN, if you were the Secretary General, how would you respond to that incitement and help in protecting these people who represent the UN, what it stands for, the Charter, and humanity at its best in its noble mission on the ground, trying to help civilians in dire need and in very complicated situations? Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Observer State of Palestine. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much for that question. It's a very pertinent one. Of course, working with the staff and for the staff is very important for the Secretary General, which is the chief, among other things, the chief administrative officer of the institution. And the IAEA work very closely with the staff association, working with them, listening to them, to their problems, and I intend to do the same if elected. I think that staff also has to respond to the highest standards in their behavior. And it's a joint effort, staff and Secretariat together. And I believe that if there is any criticism undue and unfair, of course, as Secretary General, I will address it immediately. The staff always is our strength.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Djibouti, followed by Peru and Kenya. Djibouti? I cannot see you. Not working? Oh, no, okay. So we move on to the next speaker, the distinguished representative of Peru, followed by Kenya and the Republic of Korea.
Gracias, Presidenta, y gracias al distinguido y apreciado embajador Grossi por su presentación. El Perú participa en este diálogo con el firme compromiso de fortalecer a la ONU para hacer frente de manera cooperativa a los urgentes desafíos de la humanidad. Inspirados en el legado del embajador peruano Javier Pérez de Cuéllar, único secretario general de la ONU, proveniente de América Latina y del Caribe, reafirmamos la importancia de un liderazgo capaz de generar consensos en el actual contexto internacional marcado por una creciente complejidad, volatilidad e incertidumbre. El Perú desea formular las siguientes preguntas. ¿Cuál es su visión sobre el papel que puede y debe desempeñar América Latina y el Caribe, zona de paz y región con vocación democrática, en la promoción y defensa de los principios de la Carta de la ONU y el fortalecimiento del multilateralismo? ¿Qué acciones concretas impulsará para recuperar la capacidad de interlocución y liderazgo efectivo de la Secretaría General para contribuir tanto en la prevención y solución de los graves conflictos armados como en la respuesta a las amenazas emergentes y desafíos a la paz y seguridad, tales como la delincuencia organizada transnacional y la gobernanza de la inteligencia artificial? ¿Cómo prevé fortalecer y equilibrar los tres pilares de la ONU en el marco del proceso ONU 80 y acelerar la implementación de la Agenda 2030? Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Peru. Please, Mr. Grossi.
De toda justicia, querido colega, que recordemos hoy a don Javier Pérez de Cuéllar. Muchas gracias por hacerlo. Latin America is a zone of peace, you said it, and it should always be. And in that regard, I think it has a very important role to play in expressing that in spite of differences that will always exist, an overall trend of peace, cooperation and solidarity prevails. So perhaps brothers and sisters in other parts of the world can do the same. You were talking about the ability to be an interlocutor, and I think this goes to the essence of what I believe can be the contribution of a Secretary General. When an interlocutor is accepted by parties at conflict, then at least we are starting to solve a problem. Perhaps we will not get it, but at least we are doing that. And this is my conviction. And I think it is possible. I've seen that happen at the IAEA. There's no reason why it cannot happen here. You refer to international transnational crime and new threats, which we should, of course, be addressing in a flexible manner because the nature of threats is changing, as I was mentioning in the previous question, in one of the previous questions. Agenda 2030 is there, albeit with great difficulty. As you know, we don't need to redefine it. We need to work slowly but practically to make things better. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kenya, followed by the Republic of Korea and Tajikistan.
Thank you, Madam President. DG Grossi, thank you for being here this afternoon, and thank you for your patience over what I'm sure has been a long afternoon. You have addressed some of the elements in our question, but we would be grateful for your further insight. It's well established that you have played an important role in managing complex geopolitical tensions through high-level diplomacy. How would you translate this experience into strengthening the UN's preventive diplomacy and mediation efforts, particularly in regions like Africa, where conflicts are closely linked to development challenges? Please share any applicable examples. Thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of Kenya. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much. Of course, Africa must be at the center of our preoccupations. And in terms of preventive diplomacy and reaching out and working with countries, there is an effort to be made. In previous questions made by other African colleagues today, we were referring to the work and the synergies between the African Union and the UN that can and must exist. I believe that in doing that and in seeing a Secretary General out there for real will make a big difference. This is working for me in Vienna. I hope it will work here.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Grossi, for joining us today. I have two questions. Even though we are witnessing an increasing number of unstable and volatile situations across various regions, public skepticism regarding the role and functions of the United Nations is, as you mentioned, that is unfortunately growing. While global attention is largely focused on the pressing geopolitical issues, such as the Middle East and Ukraine, there remain long-standing challenges that continue to threaten international peace and security, such as those on the Korean Peninsula. In this context, I'd like to hear your views on what would be the role and function of the Secretary General in addressing this kind of issue, which has been protected with less visibility of a short-term solution. And second thing is that as shown by the recent casualties sustained by UNIFIL personnel, the peacekeepers and humanitarian workers operating in conflict zones are facing serious and escalating threats. How would you ensure the safety and security of peacekeepers and humanitarian personnel on this ground? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Of course, you know, a few days ago I was in Seoul and I visited again the DMZ, which is, and of course, as IAEA, with the work we do on the issue of the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and things that you know very well, we are, very, very conscious of the need to address crises in different parts of the world. And here we have a clear example. And I know that there are gradual efforts there, and I am persuaded that there will be an opportunity to join efforts and to work together, UN and the Korean Peninsula, to work together. We see there we still see there the flag of the UN flying proud. And we are reminded of the history that your country went through. So I think it is one of the inspiring things that we have in front of us. Peacekeepers, of course, face very, very difficult situations. I intend to give enormous priority to this. We are seeing conflicts, important ones, where the peacekeeping funding situation is very bad. So I believe that there must be a renewed dialogue at the level of member states as to what we really are able and willing to do in terms of sustaining the peacekeeping effort apart from making speeches. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Tajikistan, followed by Belarus and Slovenia.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Grossi, for your presentation. I want to take you back to the environmental issues, mainly water and glaciers loss. I know IAEA is working and contributing on these two issues as well. So my question is, how do you see the future of water, and what role should UN play to ensure that water availability, particularly in the context of accelerating glaciers loss, becomes a central global priority both before and beyond 2030? I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Tajikistan. Please, Mr. Grossi.
I recognize the leadership of your country in this area. As you know, we have been working with the IAEA through the isotopic hydrology specialists on the protection of glaciers and access to water, which is, of course, badly degraded because of the current circumstances. I think that having had this leadership with your country, together with the Netherlands in the past and other countries that took that to heart within the UN system, I believe that we need to continue bringing this to the attention of the international agenda. Sometimes we look more into other things, but of course, access to water is essential and strategic, and we will continue doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belarus.
Благодарим вас, госпожа председатель. Спасибо огромное, господин Гросси, за ваши ответы. Наша встреча сегодня действительно представляет огромную пользу для всех нас, и пользу еще и в том плане, что мы узнали, какое количество коалиций и групп государств было создано, чтобы обладать возможностью выступить впереди национальных заявлений государств, несмотря на то, что наша делегация запросила слово еще утром. Тем не менее, мы благодарим вас за ваш вклад и за ваши ответы. Со своей стороны хотели бы отметить, что вы совершенно справедливо заметили, что Организация Объединенных Наций осуществляет свою деятельность в период активизации реформенных процессов. Эти процессы действительно, они с одной стороны направлены на выход из внутренних противоречий организации, но с другой стороны направлены на укрепление внешней способности ООН реагировать на вызовы и угрозы. Тем не менее, мы зачастую видим, что данные преобразования, они происходят настолько быстро, что не успевают, что Организация Объединенных Наций не успевает за реальностью на Земле, за изменениями, которые происходят в тех или иных горячих точках. Вам, как любителю бега, как марафонцу, мы бы хотели задать вопрос, что нужно сделать, чтобы успевать за реальностью, происходящей на Земле? Что нужно сделать, чтобы в целом организация успевала за теми изменениями, которые происходят в мире? И второй наш вопрос заключается в том, что Республика Беларусь является программной страной, и для нее очень важно укрепление оперативной деятельности системы Организации Объединенных Наций. Какое ваше отношение относительно возможного объединения и слияния отдельных программ и фондов ООН? Как это повлияет на финансирование проектов в программных странах? Не станет ли это препятствием для мобилизации ресурсов и финансовой помощи программным странам? Спасибо вам, господин Гросси.
I thank the distinguished representative of Belarus. Please.
Thank you very much for those two questions. And you are right. The international agenda is changing kaleidoscopically sometimes, and we see new things coming our way. I think the adaptability of the agenda of the United Nations in concert and in consultation with member states is very, very important. So this is why I believe that the Secretary General, the Office of the Secretary General, must be alert to those new elements we were talking about. We were hearing about cyber threats today. We're hearing about new technologies. We're hearing about transnational crime, although this is not a new thing. There are so many things that we need to be addressing. So that is very important. In terms of the reform, what you're saying about mergers are a possibility. They're not the only one that exist. What is clear is that we need to humbly recognize that there is duplication in the UN. We cannot deny that. Whether that means that A will be merged by B or that C will be swallowed by D, this is another matter. And I think we have to, all of us, transparently have a good discussion. And it's encouraging to see that within the UN80 process, this has started. But I fear, as I said, that it will be something that will transcend the next fall and will get into the next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovenia, followed by Estonia and Switzerland.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you for organizing these discussions. And welcome to Mr. Grossi, and thank you for putting your candidature forward and being with us this afternoon. You mentioned, I want to follow up something that we discussed, and the Romanian colleague also asked before, because you mentioned that UN is going in the wrong direction, and also that UN is losing the erosion of UN authority. I would put it a little differently. I think this is the consequence. This is the consequence of the erosion of the respect for international law, charter, international humanitarian law by some member states, accompanied by impunity, which then led to the losing authority of the UN, more specifically of the Security Council. You yourself said that world of polarization, there is a world of tension. Indeed, I think this world is on fire. When we look at it now, it's really, we have conflicts, wars on civilians and civilian infrastructure. We have really bellicose world. I would rather than talking about the UN going the wrong direction, I think the world is going in the wrong direction. So what we need is, of course, we need mobilization for the reform of the UN, but we also need mobilization for the renewed respect for the Charter, international law, and everything that comes around. So for that, I think we would need somebody to lead the way. We need leadership for peace, as we said it. Do you believe that, as the Secretary General, you can lead mobilization against impunity?
I thank the distinguished representative of Slovenia. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We have had some of this discussion before, and I always enjoy the very thoughtful and deep concepts that you bring to the table. I must say, coming where I come from, you won't be surprised that I say that it takes two to tango. And frankly, you're right. I mean, there is, of course, the problems inherent to the Secretariat. I address those because I aspire to be your Secretary General. So this is why I'm putting the focus on that. But you are right that we need to reestablish this credibility. But at the end of the day, it's about us being together. But I thank you for highlighting that, and I do not disagree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Given the time, 5 minutes to 6, and as this morning, minus the introductory remarks, we will end the questions at 8 minutes after 6 p.m. We will have time for 3 or 4 more questions, depending how short they are. I will give now the floor to the next speaker, the distinguished representative of Estonia, followed by Switzerland and the United Kingdom, and then we see what the time says.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Grossi, for your presentation and for your engagement today. My first question is pretty straightforward. What are the first 3 things you would do as a Secretary General if you get appointed to this position? My second question pertains to Ukraine. End of last year, the General Assembly adopted resolution, Return of Ukrainian Children, which requested Secretary General to exercise his good offices to ensure the immediate, safe and unconditional return of all Ukrainian children unlawfully deported and forcibly transferred by Russia. What would be your steps as the Secretary General to implement this mandate and ensure effective and coordinated UN action? And my final question is with regards to the SG selection process. The General Assembly has called for all SG candidates to publish any funding resources they have relating to their candidature. This is an important provision for accountability, transparency, and credibility of candidates. Do you plan to publish more detailed and updated campaign financing disclosures throughout the process? I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Estonia. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much. On the first 3 things, it's difficult to say, but I think the question was put to me in a rather different way earlier in the discussion. I think what we need to do if having the honor of being elected would be to for all to see that the new Secretary General is rolling his sleeves, in this case, if it was me, and starting from the first day, dealing with the important things that are there in front of us. Some of them will be the same, some of them will continue, and some might be new. But showing commitment, assertiveness, and action will be very, very important to really confirm that this trust that is being put into the new Secretary General was well justified. In terms of Ukraine and the war and everything there is no interaction at the moment at the UN level. So I hope to be able to, in the same spirit that I have been doing from the IEA, to have a good discussion with belligerents on all the aspects of the conflict, including the one that you refer to. The third, of course, transparency is all. You know, on this issue, I don't have much to add because I'm paying from my own pocket. I paid my ticket to come here. I'm paying my hotel. I'm paying my meals. So frankly, I don't have anybody paying anything for me other than myself. So perhaps that is a reiteration of the letter I sent, or through the Argentine mission that was sent last November. So I don't have any additional information than to repeat that when I'm involved in anything having to do with the selection process, it's my own private funds that finance it. I hope this is satisfactory.
I thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Switzerland, followed by the United Kingdom.
Merci Madame la Présidente pour cette opportunité et merci à Monsieur Grossi pour votre présentation et les réponses. Quelques questions de follow-up. Merci de vouloir protéger si clairement la charte et le droit international. Et on a tourné déjà autour de cette question à plusieurs fois. On se voit face à des attaques très concrètes, que ce soit contre les principes de la charte ou un massif backlash contre les droits des femmes qui vont derrière les acquis de Beijing, ou contre le changement climatique, la durabilité, qui vont derrière l'agenda 2030. D'accord, il faut deux pour le tango. Comment allez-vous nous aider à restaurer ces acquis qui sont tellement importants? Deuxièmement, vous avez aussi clairement dit combien c'est important d'avoir un staff motivé. Si vous reprenez ce mandat, on sera 2 ans après le début des réformes urgentes et nécessaires, mais des milliers de personnes ont perdu leur poste et ce n'est pas un secret que l'atmosphère n'est pas très bonne. Comment allez-vous restaurer la confiance du staff au-delà des contrats et de la porte ouverte, qui est la source la plus importante, et assurer que ce n'est pas les plus jeunes ou les femmes qui vont perdre leur poste? Et ça nous amène aux jeunes. Vous avez dit que les jeunes ne croient plus aux Nations Unies. J'espère bien entendu que vous n'avez pas raison, mais dans tous les cas, on a besoin d'eux pour le futur des Nations Unies. Comment allez-vous les engager dans le futur? Merci beaucoup.
I thank the distinguished representative of Switzerland. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Merci, Madame l'ambassadrice. C'est très bien de vous revoir cet après-midi. La restauration des acquis, je crois que ça dépend du dialogue et de la capacité du secrétaire général d'être crédible. Les interlocuteurs auront ses raisons et ses principes et ses priorités, mais nous avons besoin d'un secrétaire général qui soit capable de regagner cette crédibilité. La question du staff, ça me préoccupe énormément. Je crois qu'il faut de toute façon reconnaître que nous devons mener un effort de rationalisation administrative et que ça pourrait comprendre la perte ou la réduction de postes. Ça a déjà eu lieu pour l'approbation du budget de cette année-ci que vous avez approuvé. Et donc je crois qu'il faut travailler avec les associations du personnel de manière professionnelle. Ça s'est fait d'une manière professionnelle, si cela doit être fait. Mais moi, je crois au staff. À l'agence où j'ai travaillé aussi à l'OIAC, comme vous savez peut-être, et j'ai toujours été entouré par des professionnels du plus haut calibre. Donc je crois qu'il faut les motiver, il faut les traiter bien, avec justice. Pas des privilèges, évidemment, pas des privilèges, mais un traitement juste. Pour le jeune, je crois qu'il faut d'abord les entendre, ça c'est très, très important, et deuxièmement, il faut savoir communiquer, parce que je crois qu'on ne le fait pas assez bien, et ils ne comprennent pas pourquoi le travail des Nations Unies et des organisations sur le terrain est aussi essentiel. Merci.
I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom, and given we have a few minutes, followed by Ireland.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Grossi, for setting out your vision for the role of Secretary General, and once again, thank you, President Baerbock, for convening these dialogues. Very valuable opportunity for Member States, civil society to engage meaningfully with candidates. Mr. Grossi, if I can, I will take you back to some of the comments you made on UN80. You described it as a good first step, and a good first step to be taken forward in partnership. And it would be helpful to understand further what that looks like. In particular, how would you, as Secretary General, use your leadership within the organisation to take those further steps, to ensure that that reform is institutionalised and sustained in order to improve delivery across the three pillars of the United Nations? Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. Please, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much. Yes, the further steps, I think it's something that we should approach with care. Why I say this? In the first place, because of course, UN80 is a first step. It couldn't be otherwise. We had to start somewhere, and it sometimes is, you know, the clean sheet of paper is the most difficult thing, and we are all grateful that this has been done. But this has revealed the dimension of the problem as well. Perhaps we knew it, perhaps you knew it in London or others in other places, but we knew it, that we had to do something, and we are starting. So my impression is that we should, from the wisdom of member states, have a direction set, but we should also avoid the other danger of getting into a self-consumed exercise, a never-ending exercise that will take, you know, in a loop, that will take us from one thing to the other, and from the review of the reform and the review of the review of the reform. And I think that is a danger, and we are all multilateralists, so we are family here. We suffer from that a lot in the UN system in general. So I think we need to have this wisdom. And also, it's about, as I was telling the ambassador of Switzerland, is an issue of credibility. If you trust DSG, and then it is a good understanding that you are setting the direction as it should be, and then the chief administrative officer is going to be doing the thing for you. We don't need to be renegotiating what we do at every step. So I am optimistic in the sense that perhaps in this and on other things as well, perhaps more important, having a new team in 1st of January will be a good opportunity for all of us to say to ourselves, let's give it a try together.
Thank you. I now give the floor as the last member state speaker of this day to the distinguished representative of Ireland.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Director General. Whatever about the Vienna Marathon, I'm delighted to cross the line after what's been a very, very long day today, but it's been a really good day and a really useful interactive dialogue, and we're looking to two more tomorrow. Just a very simple question, because a lot has already been asked, but in our discussions here on reform, one idea that's been put about has been changing the term of the Secretary General from a two-term to a one-term. I suppose one term maybe perhaps bolder, more ambitious, a sprint as it were, two-term, maybe more cautious, a marathon. So in your view, what's better for the United Nations and for member states, one term or two?
I thank the distinguished representative of Ireland. On a technical note, this will be taped, this session here for the future. I now give the floor to Mr. Grossi to answer this question and also as a final wrap-up.
Yeah. Dear Ambassador, up to you. Up to you. But let me finish by, first of all, thanking you, Annalena. Thank you, Madam President, for having allowed and organized this. I really enjoyed it, having this opportunity to have this direct conversation with you. And like the UN80, this is a first step in the right direction. So thank you very much.
We have now come to the end of this interactive dialogue. I would like to thank Mr. Grossi and all the participants for their contribution, member states and civil society. Before adjourning, we haven't adjourned yet, before adjourning, I would like to remind members that the next interactive dialogue with Ms. Rebecca Greenspan-Myfius will take place tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. sharp in this chamber. And on a technical note, for the technicians, please could you, with relation to the temperature in this room, have it less cold tomorrow, not only because we spoke about energy savings, but to ensure that we are not sick after tomorrow's 6 hours in this room. By this, the meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening. Thank you.